Brent Cartwright. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Patrick, thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, you betcha. So I want to start out with a quote that's pretty funny. That really caught my eye. Turns out getting shot wasn't the worst thing. And I'm thinking, who says that? And I'm like, well, you do. Can you please explain that?
Dude, so actually that first came born from where I was traveling around speaking, and that was the name of my presentation because people just imagine, right, getting shot is one of the worst things that can be, happen to you in your life. And truly, it's not a great thing to happen.
No.
But it absolutely saved my life getting shot. So yeah, I say it and I mean it because there was a path in my career that I was going down that was I was going downhill quickly and I didn't even see it. And it wasn't until I got shot that I could finally start, opening my eyes after some therapy and everything else that says,
Right.
man, like here's where your trajectory, and this is why you got shot. I mean, I made a bunch of mistakes. Now, ultimately, the guy that shot me, he's responsible, but I made my career was going down the path and I made some mistakes that led me to doing some really risky stuff for little reward, except for personal, addiction reward. So yeah, man, turns out getting shot wasn't the worst thing. It was, career commitment and addiction to adrenaline.
Yeah, I gotcha. And we will talk more in depth about your shooting later in the show. But first, how did you get into law enforcement? When did you get bit by that police bug?
Dude, totally by accident. Totally by
That's so fun.
accident.
I love hearing these stories. Go ahead. I want to hear it.
Yeah, so I went to college, and that's where I met my girlfriend, now wife.
Hmm.
And I was in the National Guard at the time. I had gotten uh, released early, like 1 month early from my, I spent, at that point, 8.5 years in the National Guard. And I turned in all my gear and I was like, out, see ya. 3 weeks later, they called me up and said, hey, we're being deployed. This was December of '03. And I was, oh, man. So after I'd, thrown the middle fingers up to a bunch of people that I didn't like and told them
Sure.
exactly what I thought of them, I'm eating crow, getting my gear back out of supply and getting deployed. Well, I was an artilleryman. And well, at the time in '03, we didn't need artillerymen. We were, running supply lines. We just gotten into Iraq. And so they were like, well, we need this convoy security. So the easiest way to do that was to reclass us to MPs. So we went out and did a whole reclass thing for like 4 months, training up, anticipating we're going to go to Iraq or Afghanistan and be convoy security because that's almost all of what we trained for was convoy security and combat arms and
Yeah.
infantry tactics. Well, they got a hold of us in late February of '04 and said, "Okay, well, here's the deal. We're going to keep you stateside, and now you're going to uniform police MPs on post at Fort Lewis, Washington." So that was my first taste of it, and I would say we were the police because we were, but it really wasn't police work. I mean, most of the post was deployed and gone, except for the spouses and the
Okay.
dependents. But it's still a big post. But it wasn't really police work. And by the time I got done, I really didn't want to be a police officer. Like, there was no way. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. And I got back, and my wife, we started talking like, where are we going to uproot? And I know you're originally from Chicago, way
Hmm.
back when, and
Yep.
that's where my wife's from.
Oh, okay.
So we're like, hey, would we move to Chicago? And I was like, okay, well, looking at it in like her old neighborhood of Lincoln Park, I'm like, okay,
Yep.
what's rent going to be? Oh yeah,
Oh, a lot.
$4,000 a month for renting somebody's basement. And I was like,
Yep.
yeah, okay. Maybe we go back to Kansas City where I'm from. So we did that, and my roommate from Fort Lewis happened to be a Kansas City police officer. And
Okay.
as we talked back and forth as a year and a half went by, I was doing outside sales, and he came up and he said, "Dude, how's it going?" I'm like, "Man, I am like beating my head against the wall. I'm going door to door selling payroll services. There's like no adrenaline and
Oh,
excitement, and I hate it.
yeah.
Uh, it's driving me nuts. I'm making good money." And he said, "Hey, why don't you come do a ride along?" I was like, I'm not going to be a police officer, buddy. He goes, "No, no, no, no. Give it a try. Give it a try. I
And
promise."
for which department do you want you to
In
do a ride along?
Kansas City, Missouri. So in our
Okay.
region, we're the biggest department.
Okay.
At the time, I think we had about 1,300 officers. We whittled down right now,
Yeah.
and our population right around 500,000.
Okay.
So, um, but I did a ride along, man, and we got in a the guys I was riding with, we got in a foot chase like right out the gate. And then we got into had a shooting happen. We get there, and it's like just a crazy scene and experience. And after that, we go out and we get a car chase and we get disregarded off of it. But I mean, that's all it took, and I was hooked. I was like, "Yep." I came home and I talked to well, we weren't married yet, but I talked to her and I said, "Hey, babe, I'm thinking about doing this." She's like, "Are you sure?" Yeah, it's a pay cut of like 60% of, I mean, 60% pay cut. So I would be making about 40% of what I was making.
What
And
do you remember what the starting pay was?
$36,000,
Yeah, for me, what year was this?
2007.
Wow, that's low. In 95, the starting pay in Milwaukee when I was in the academy was, you know what? Yeah, that makes sense. It was about 27, 28,000.
Isn't that nuts?
I know.
Like,
And I'm just like, and my ex-wife was making 30,000 a year, working like 80 hours a week in a kitchen at a restaurant. She was the kitchen manager and she's like, "Oh, I'm making more money than you." And I'm just like, "Don't worry, honey. I'll make that up really fast." Yeah, it's like, okay. And lo and
yeah.
behold, yes. But
Yeah,
yeah,
our pay. Go ahead.
no, we don't get into this to get rich, but it is nice to make a living.
Well, like, I mean, you're putting your life on the line and you're taking a lot of risks,
Right.
physically, mentally. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. And our pay scales are very similar to like the military, where at it, every year you get a little bump, and then your
Yes.
eighth year you top out and you get a big bump. Of course, for me, really stunk was '08, '09. The economy went to complete crapper. We had a pay
Oh
freeze
yeah.
and hiring freeze. So
Oh,
then it took me, instead of 8 years of topping out, it took me a little over 11.
okay.
So man, it's just what a pain. But you're right. We don't do it for the money. And I really, I mean, even that crappy pay, I was hooked, man. I loved it.
Now, did you have any relatives in police work, like growing up?
None, none. I
Okay.
have I have a background with my family of all of service. So both grandparents, grandpas were in World War II. My
Oh,
dad in
okay.
the Army during Vietnam. My brother signed up in the Army just after the first Gulf War.
Okay.
So we have a long lineage of that, of service in the
Yes.
country, but just not police work, man. It was, my parents were like, "You're doing what? How'd you go to college? Business?"
Yeah, I was going
Oh,
to ask you, what was your major in college? What did you think? Like when you were in college, what what career trajectory did you think you were going? Like what were you gonna do when you grew up?
finance. Yeah. So
Finance.
yeah, finance, stocks, trading, investments. That was what I thought. And then in college, I took a law class and absolutely loved it. So actually, right before I got deployed, I'd gotten accepted to three different law schools and was trying to decide what law school to
Oh,
go. I was
okay.
going to be a lawyer. And then, I still love finance, but I was like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. But by the time I got out, for our 18-month deployment, I was stop loss that whole time. So
Yeah.
after 18 months, I thought, man, going back to school just sounds terrible. I just want to make some money.
Now,
So
you ever think about going to law school now since you retired?
no, man. I mean,
No?
you know how it is now that you run into so many lawyers, you just want to strangle them. So
Well, there's different law you could go into. I mean,
sure.
it doesn't
I
have to
had
be
a
criminal. Yeah, you and you don't want to turn to the dark side and be a defense attorney, or anything like that. And prosecutors make less than the cops usually, and their burnout rate is worse than the cops. That's a revolving door in a DA's office.
Yeah. As all the prosecutors I worked with, that's exactly what they said. We'd love to have you as a prosecutor. You'd be awesome. You know the law, and I did so great on all my cases, but they said just you know how to convict somebody, so that means you really know how to get somebody off. So just don't be a defense attorney if you're going to do that. I promise. I promise I will. I
Yes.
usually like the defense attorneys because my cases were rock solid. So I get up on the stand, they try to, get me hung up. I was like, yeah, okay, nice try.
Well, I've said this 100 times and I'll say it again. If there's like any rookies listening to this, I could always tell, as a boss, I was a sergeant for 17 years. When one of your jobs is approving police reports when somebody arrested somebody, and I could always tell when somebody got their nose bloodied in a motions hearing, a motion to suppress, because it's like, you know, somebody who was kind of made, a fool on the stand by a decent defense attorney, the next report they write is going to be, it's like, I, Officer, Smith, on date, date, and time, it was 9 p.m. The lights were illuminated with, this kind of street lights. I was in full uniform with my badge and nameplate affixed to my outermost garment. I had my lights and siren on my fully marked squad car activated. They just so they cut down, these defense attorneys before they could even start.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could
Smart move.
always tell.
Yeah.
And me being one of them as well, where I've had my face caved in, in defense, in motions hearings, you're just like, what just happened? Holy shit. It's like, if it's not on your report, it didn't happen. And it's
Yep.
all how you answer the questions. And I mean, you know how that goes. But yeah, experience is the teacher for that.
Yep. Yep. You got to get kicked down before you realize
Oh,
your mistakes for sure. And that does suck.
it does suck. Quite, yes, it really does. It's up there with going to the dentist. It's just no fun, but what are you gonna do? So you had relatives that were in police, not police work, but in public service. Now, when you said, "Yeah, I'm gonna be a cop," what did your parents think?
Hated it. My
Oh,
dad was pretty quiet and stoic about it. Um, my mom was worried. I mean, the same as when I joined the military. I mean, this was before even you thought about, would we be in Afghanistan and Iraq? I mean, I signed up in '96.
sure.
So, I mean, there was nothing going on. So my mom was even worried then. So then she got really worried.
Oof.
But I
Yeah.
think at the time too, though, I mean, I got on later than most people.
How old were you?
Almost 29.
Yeah, I was 30 when I got on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, there's a lot of 21, 22, 23
Ooh.
year old cops.
Yeah, there
Uh,
is.
but me and you were, I was looked at as kind of almost like a dinosaur, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's not a lot of people that start at 29 and 30.
Well, thank goodness there was a guy there. He was a parking checker for 20 years. So he was like almost 40 years old. And he's going through the academy. And after every run, he's looking at me and says, Pat, I'm going to die. I can't do this shit anymore. I'm going to die. And I'm like, no, you're not. You got this, buddy. You got it. Because it's like, yeah, you're running with these 21, 22-year-old kids. And it's like, God, you wouldn't think that like 8 years or 7 years or 9 years make, oh, yeah, it does make a difference big time. When they're
100%.
beating you into the ground, it's like, I'm like, God, I wish I was young. It's like, holy cow, all day long. So your parents, were you married or were you dating your wife at that point in time?
Still just dating her. We got married. Um, I was probably like 2 weeks off of our break-in period. So you get out 6 month academy, you do 2 months of break-in, and then you're left to your own to run and gun on the streets. And so it was very shortly after graduating and getting off of break-in that we got married.
Wow. What did your wife think of you being a cop?
I think she was proud, same as I am, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
still carry police stuff all over
Oh,
our stuff.
absolutely. It's a part of your identity.
So she was proud of it, and I mean, she would wear more police, garb and stuff than I would even do.
Right.
Um, I think she wasn't really fully, as much as I wasn't expecting or knowing what to expect in the field and what it would really entail. I mean, you hear
Right.
about police officers, but she Lincoln Park area, I wouldn't classify where she was growing up at that time as a bad neighborhoods. It still wouldn't. And I grew up in a suburb, 45 minutes away from Kansas City. So
Okay.
my hometown had 2,000 people in it. Uh,
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
yeah, I'm going into the city, and it's like Kansas City is like Milwaukee, right? It was a real
Right.
deal. It's a
Oh,
dangerous
yeah.
place.
Absolutely.
So I think
Absolutely.
her being naive about it and not understanding exactly what the dangers were until I came home tell the stories, and then she was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
are you sure about this?" And I was already hooked, though. I'm like, "Yep, I
Yeah.
am sure." And
Yeah.
now you can pull me away.
Yeah, once you get hooked, yeah, hooked is a great word for it because it does just suck you in, man. Your first chase, your first what, fill in the blank, especially if you're in a busy area. If you're in, a major metropolitan USA where people are shooting and killing each other on the regular, it's for a cop, you're chasing bad guys, yeah, you get hooked. It happens very easily. I was going to ask you, did your time in the army, do you think prepare you for your career in law enforcement?
It did. I mean, obviously, it's a pretty militaristic structure at our department, especially in the academy. And I knew I'm low man on the totem pole. So when I came in as almost 30 on break-in, and I had like 24-year-old, FTO.
Oh
So I was
God,
like,
that sucks.
and I get it. I didn't know anything, but
Right.
um, uh, I think there was a lot of discipline, and I think really what helped me more was probably my sales time because you know this better than I
Oh,
do.
you could talk.
If you're on patrol and you can talk to people, and I mean, most of the time you can't solve the calls we go on to with handcuffing someone and take them to jail. You
Right.
got to sell them on a solution, and that's not always easy, especially if they're drunk, high, or anything in between.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that really,
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree because, I sold cars for 4 years and I bartended before I was a cop. And I think those things really, really helped me. Whereas, I mean, one of the cool kids, like catchphrase things is de-escalation, in police work. And that's been going on forever. After your first fight, you don't want to fight anybody anymore. Even if you know you're going to win, which you will, it's like a day or two later, you're like, oh man, that hurts. Where did that come from? And as you get older, you're like, okay, this is not fun anymore. This is, it's like, so you learn how to talk to people. And and we've all worked with those cops that were the opposite, that couldn't talk to people, they'd make Mother Teresa a fighter. They'd make Gandhi a no person. It just sucked. I hate, you could just close your eyes and it's like, yeah, fill in the blank with whoever that cop was that just they couldn't talk. And then there was others that they could have been stand-up comics. They could have been, just they had the gift of gab, and you
yeah,
need that.
yeah, and that's. I mean, you got people that have become cops from all kinds of backgrounds. We had a guy that left the church as a priest, and he was a cop
Wow.
and a stand-up comedian. I'm like that guy was hilarious. But this job can also wear on you enough where even like that guy was like, "Come on, man, I am just tired." And the burnout it can be a real thing. Like that's why
Oh yeah.
I knew about your background, and you listen to a couple of your other interviews. I'm like, dude, spent 25 years on patrol, in like the worst part of Milwaukee. Yeah, I mean that's rare. That is rare because it can just beat you down.
I give all, anybody that, puts the badge on and does the job, I have nothing but mad respect for. But the ones who were the ground pounders that did the job and took the assignments day after day after day for 25, 30 years. I was a boss for 17. So I don't look at it as it was as bad as being, a regular patrol officer. Because I think, they take the bulk of everything. What people don't understand is you see on TV and movies, you have the one lone detective running after some guy in an alley, and they're the ones doing all the police work. And I'm like, and like I said before, we'll talk about your shooting, but most like fatal encounters are first responders, and those are the cops that respond to whatever. And boy, it's doing that for 25, 30 years. Yeah, it chews you up. It really does.
Especially in the big cities like ours.
Yes.
Time before I transferred to undercover, man, I was running 40, 50 calls a night. And having to do self-initiated. That's a lot of work in a 10-hour shift. I
It
mean,
sure
that's
is.
fun.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then, I'm sure Kansas is the same as Milwaukee. You're driving around in a squad car at night and you're hearing people shooting guns off all the time. I mean
Yeah,
that
I was up 8 at night till 6 in the mornings, and just like you were
yeah,
the overnight guy, it was. I mean, that's where all the stuff happens, and that's where
yeah.
you want to be, though.
Yeah, true. But I was shocked by like day shift. I didn't want to go day shift. I did because of my divorce, but it was different crime. And then you found like real victims of crime, the carjacking the victim, the pregnant woman who is just carjacked and the asshole has to kick her in the stomach.
Yeah,
You got her car. You have to do that. That's when you really start to lose faith in humanity. You're just like, but we'd have bank robberies. I never handled a bank robbery before. They weren't open at night. So,
yeah,
it's a different bird, and we were usually we're severely understaffed during the day too. So it felt busier than it actually was because you just didn't have the cops.
yeah. That's same
So
here.
yeah,
Yeah,
it just yeah. But you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. I couldn't work in a suburb. I couldn't work in a slow town somewhere. After doing, and I'm sure you feel the same way. It's like I couldn't be like spend my day stopping soccer moms that were going 5 miles over the speed limit. I would go out of my freaking mind. I couldn't do that. I mean, and somebody's got to do it, I guess, but not me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with
Yeah.
you.
So you started in Kansas. You stayed in Kansas, correct?
Yeah, Kansas City on the Missouri side. Yep.
Okay, on the Missouri side. Can you describe the landscape? Like what was it like where you worked?
So we break up Kansas City into zones, and we call them, center, metro, east, north, and south, and Shoal Creek. So those are our 6 zones. They're not like district numbers, but we have names for them. But center zone, metro, and east, that's our inner cities, and that's obviously our most busy. And I worked in
Yeah.
center zone, so it encompassed downtown and heading east. And our east side in Kansas City, that's our most dangerous and most violent. So we'll generally have between 150 to 180 murders for our town, and with 500,000 people, that
Yeah,
generally
that's a lot. Yeah.
puts us in the top 10, nationally
Oh,
per
absolutely.
capita. And so yeah, it was very unexpected when I came on a break. I knew what I was walking into, but you really never know exactly
No, you
what's
don't.
until you get into it. I mean,
Right.
my second night, I went from my second night ever with an FTO. I went from a rape call to a shooting where the guy was dead, and like this whole crowd's like yelling at me why I'm not doing CPR. Well, the guy had like his eyeball was on the ground, his brain was oozing from the front of his skull. I mean, the guy put 7 bullets in his head, and it
Oh,
looked like a pumpkin that got mushed, after being carved and sitting out in the sun for a month.
right.
So, like, okay, how am I going to do CPR with this guy? Like, you can't.
Right.
And from a guy who, again, from a small little suburb, I mean, I'd seen only like one other dead person before in my life, and like this was, and that was a drowning victim. So there's something a whole different thing when there's blood everywhere.
Oh
So
yeah, that's yeah,
yeah, it
it's
was.
a
We're ours again. I stayed in that same zone, the most violent, 2 zones, center zone and east zone are our most violent ones, and I stayed in it the entire time. And part of it's because I loved it, man. It was
right.
You could always get in a foot chase. Our car chase policy was a little different, so depending on what they were running for, you could always find that kind of stuff. And I mean, lots of fights. Even if you try to de-escalate it down, there's just
Oh yeah, there are times where all the de-escalation and verbal judo in the world is not going to work, and this dude wants to fight, or they're
yeah,
high, they're drunk, they're who knows what's going on, but you're there the worst day of their life, and you're trying to calm them down, and sometimes you can, and sometimes, well, you just can't. That's
nope,
just the way it is.
yeah.
So, what shifts did you start on?
I stayed. I broke in. It was the dog watch shift. We call the dog watch the overnight. So my shift started at 8 at night. Got off at 6 in the morning,
Okay,
and that sector that I broke in on, I stayed in that my entire time in patrol. That I had like the best boss ever, and
cool.
she kept me there after I got off. She's like, "Al, I don't like crappy recruits, and you're a great recruit. So I
Okay.
wanted my squad, and I stayed there because we had a really great unit, and they're just awesome hard workers. A lot of sector integrity. Like somebody else didn't come from another zone,
Yeah.
take reports to your area. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you would bust your butt just so much to have that. There was other people that wouldn't, and you'd be mad at them, but like you wouldn't come into my sector and take a report or a call. So,
That for people that are listening or watching this, that was a huge deal. For us, we had squad areas. So, I'd say I'm squad 50, and that's, North Avenue to Juneau, 3rd to 16th Street. And say I'm on a hitch, we called them hitches instead of assignments.
okay,
And I'm on a hitch, and, I'm doing whatever, and then another call comes over in my area, in my squad area, for the sexual assault of a child or something just horrible. And, they pull somebody from another squad area. It wasn't unusual for them to get on a side chat. I was like, hey, where the fuck are you? It's like, are you going to be there all night? I just got your shitty hitch. Take care of your hitch. Take care of your area. It's like they weren't shy about it, especially the veterans. They're like, no, 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 no. You better clear off whatever you're on right now because I don't want this. That's just the way it is.
yeah. Yeah, you get the guys on oh, put me on an R call, go to the bathroom or take
Yeah.
a snack. You're like, why is he there for 30 minutes and I'm taking calls in his area?
Yeah, no. Yeah,
You let him have it. I mean,
that
you would let
that
him have it.
yeah, absolutely that does not fly. And sometimes it really wasn't warranted. I'm like, I'm on a shooting. like two squad areas over. I don't care. I don't want your hitch. And I'm like, well, why don't you tell this dead guy that? Sarge ain't gonna be too happy with that if I just like walk away. Now, did you have partners? Were you like two-man cars or were you by yourself?
So we got pretty short-handed there pretty quick. So they would try all kinds of things to put as many cars out on there. So when we would get in, we would double up with a PM shift guy. So like the 1 to 11 shift guy would jump in your car until so you'd be doubled up for 3 hours and then by yourself.
Oh,
And
okay.
eventually they worked it out where just everybody takes a one-man car and everybody's a one-man crew until we wrecked cars and didn't have a car. So then you get to double up. But
Right.
most generally, eventually it became where I was just riding solos.
See, and I think that's sad because there's obviously the safety benefit of having a partner, sitting next to you, but it's so much more. You can bounce stuff off of your partner. You're on your way to the fill in the blank icky assignment, and it's like, how are we going to do this? Or it's just nice to have somebody else to talk to about that. Or, you know what? You had a fight with your wife. Or, it's like, hey, you know what? You got a sick kid, or whatever the case may be. It's so nice to have that person next to you, and you feel like you can get through anything that night if you have the right partner.
Yeah, and that's I mean beyond yeah right the decision making. We can make all kinds of decisions in the world, but they may not always be the best. But somebody can check you on it
Yep.
and be like, "Hey, man, this is a better way to do this." And oh, okay, yeah, yeah. But you're right. The whole aspect of like we're finding with new officers, their communication skills may be lacking a little bit. Right? People are used to texting, social
Yeah,
media, and
absolutely. The keyboard warriors. Yeah, they don't go face to face with somebody, it's all, keyboard tough guys.
yeah, which is makes it harder when you're in the field of having to be a good communicator.
Right.
So when you have that in the car, and that usually carries over. And also, it's nice to, especially if you have the dead baby or whatever else, and
Right.
just break your heart to have somebody else that you've already had a relationship with that you can trust to talk to,
Yep.
and prevent. Because as we both know, there's a big sign of weakness in this field if you have say I'm struggling.
Oh yeah.
So I think the tide's turning a little bit, but there's still that. But if you've got a trusted guy, I mean, that's just people venting and it gets off your chest versus holding it in and,
Yes.
letting it fester.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a real good friend of mine when I was going to college that joined the department before I did. He got on before me. And we were out for drinks one night and I said, "Well, what's the secret sauce? What's the key to this job?" He said, "You know what? It's all who's sitting next to you in your squad car." He said, "You can get through anything, no matter how shitty the assignment is, if you have the right person sitting next to you and handling it with you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, unfortunately, like you said, with all these shortages, that's kind of a rarity. It's a luxury to have two cops in one car, and I wish we had that. I really wish they did have two cops in every squad car, but I understand it." Um, so how far in your career did you go before you went into undercover work? How many years?
6 years.
Okay.
So I spent about a 7 month hiatus. Uh, into year two, I got run over by a car, and drugged down the interstate. So it
Oh my God, what happened?
drunk per. We have a big entertainment district in our area,
Yeah.
so we had a car accident happen on the interstate, and it was all icy. And my partner was running. Uh, I say partner, right? Still by ourselves. So he's in his car, and he's got traffic, moving it down from 3 lanes into one on I-35. And the fire truck had the whole scene blocked. It was an injury accident. Just a drunk girl. She came driving past him going 90,
Oh,
barely came to a skidding stop. And I I had a couple excessive force complaints, so I was warned if you got to go hands on somebody, make sure you have somebody else with you. And
that's
so
not
basically,
always possible. That's the problem with
it isn't.
that.
And I still frustrated to this day that that was happening to me because I got cleared on those complaints, and I knew
Yeah.
I would.
And
Uh,
yeah, I'll stop you there because that's one of my pet peeves. Every cop that actually goes out and does police work and arrests people on the regular, you are going to get complaints. That's a
yep,
given. I had
yep,
my own seat up at Internal Affairs. I was like, hey, Pat, hey, how's it going? I was like, all right, let's go through this. It's like, and if you're a boss of active cops or like a specialty unit, yeah, you're going to get complaints because guess what? People aren't happy about going to jail. It's
yep.
just the way it is. Sorry
Yep.
to cut you off like that,
No,
but
no,
oh,
I'm
that gets
100% agreement. It pissed me off too, especially after this. So this girl all by herself, really tiny little petite girl. I told her to shut the car off. She rolls the window down, shuts the car off, and I said, "Hey, I could smell the alcohol on her." I was like,
yeah.
"Okay, well, this accident's about wrapped up. I'll do the DUI on her and get on my way." And I said, "I need you to step out of the car." She's like, "No." So I tried to open the car door,
Yeah.
and she locked the door. And then just then, another car had slipped on the ice and almost
Ah.
hit her car, which would have pinned me on the inner guardrail or the inner concrete barrier on the
Ah.
median. So,
Yeah.
like, this isn't safe. Like, we need to put her in my car.
Yeah.
So I unlocked her car and she locked the car door again. I said, "Okay, I'll fight this fight later." I reached in, took her car keys, and I stood in front of her car and I was watching traffic come, and I let them know, "Hey, send me a wagon. I'm gonna have to do this. A wagon being a prisoner transport
Yeah.
van." So said, send someone down here. I've got a DUI, and all of a sudden her car fired up and started peeling off. So I tried to run towards the front of my car, and she these lanes were blocked. She was here on the inside me, so she couldn't go left. So she went right where my car was and ran me right over. I
Oh.
got stuck up underneath an Acura TL, which is not
Oh.
a big car, and drug about 100 yards down. And when I finally broke loose, I hit the guardrail going about like 40 miles an hour, and it tore my shoulder
Oh
all
my
to
God. You're lucky
so
you're alive.
100%. She got away. We caught her like 2 weeks later. But yeah, man, I had to get surgery and a bunch of physical therapy because it was just shredded. So
What did they charge her with? Do you remember?
yeah, you're gonna love this one. Not to be unexpected in the inner cities with some soft on crime district attorneys.
Yeah.
So she got felony resist arrests, two felony DUIs because when we caught her 2 weeks later, she was drunk again.
Jesus.
Um, and felony assault on a law enforcement officer. She got credit for the time served, which was the 2 days that she was in waiting to post bond, and got 1 year probation.
Oh my God.
And
So
it was
that is so, intentionally, hitting and dragging a person, let alone a police officer in full uniform, isn't attempt homicide? How?
She got
How
home,
is that not?
posted on Facebook. "Oh my God, I just did something so crazy. I'm so scared and so nervous." And so she's like basically admitting our awesome detective found all this stuff on that
Yeah.
she posted. Because this was '08, which not a lot of people knew how to work Facebook in '08.
Yeah,
So
right.
she was, "Oh, I'm so scared and nervous. I can't believe what I've just done." And we get to court, and she takes this sweetheart plea deal, and as long as she didn't get arrested in the next 12 months, it goes off her record. So
Oh my God.
every time
That's
she messed up, got a speeding ticket, I was emailing the prosecutor and the judge, and
yeah.
they were like, "Yeah, we're not revoking her. Sorry." So she
No,
got basically she's clean and
that's
scot-free now.
that's where the frustration in police work really comes from. People think it's like, oh yeah, you're arresting all these people. You know how hard it is to get a DA to charge a case? Yeah, it's in a big city like what you're talking about. I mean, where I live, I'm 30 miles out of Waukesha, and I bartend one night a week at my buddy's Irish place, O'Donoghue's in Elm Grove. And I was talking to a customer last week, and he's a defense attorney. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, whatever. And we were talking about it, and he's like, "Well, you're not talking about Waukesha County, are you?" I said, "No, I'm talking about Milwaukee County." He says, "Yeah." He said, "Those are two completely different birds." He says, "Oh my God, there are hangman judges in Waukesha, and Milwaukee's almost nothing gets charged." I'm like, "Yeah, no shit."
It's
Ugh.
Kansas City the same way. We call it north of the river is Clay and Platte County. Clay and Platte County. Man, I'm all mixed up on that one. Even if you get in a car chase, the defense attorneys have all got their clients know, "Hey, if you start getting pigeonholed and you're going towards the river, stop. Stay in Jackson County. Do not go north."
Okay.
We have so many car chases that'll just like
Yeah,
stop at the prison. And they're
that's
like,
funny.
"Give it up."
All right.
Just because if you carry it over, then you get arrested in Clay.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
now they'll tie you up and put you away for 40 years for some stuff. Uh, but yeah, Jackson County. I mean, a murder in Jackson County, it's not unheard of to get like 7 years and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
credit for
Yeah,
good behavior out in 5 for killing somebody.
absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. It's not a big deal.
yeah.
God. So you were in your career for how long again before you got you about 6 years?
Oh, yeah. So
Seven?
yeah, a year and a half before I got hit, 6 years in patrol.
Oh, okay, so 6 years of patrol now. Did you find it or did it find you undercover work?
Man, I sought it out after a conversation with my academy buddy who was undercover,
Okay.
and I was burnt out. I mean, similar to how I was in sales, looking for something more exciting, better to bring me out of the dumps. And I found police work. I got burnt out in patrol, and my buddy was leaving the undercover squad, and he's like, "Man, do you want to have drinks just to talk and bullshit?" I was like, "Yeah." And he starts telling me about all the stuff he's doing, and I mean, it was like when my buddy was telling me about patrol in Kansas City. When I was not even on the department. I
Right.
was like, "My God, this is like the coolest stuff. Why are you leaving this unit?" And he said, "Man, you make it about 18 months is the average time span as an undercover, and
Okay.
then you're done and you get out. It wears on you, and it's 18 months is the average lifespan of a UC." I was like, "Okay, I can't believe that, but okay, I'm
Now,
I'm in."
is this like a narcotic? A lot of it's narcotics and gang stuff, for undercover. For
Yeah, so this unit was our actual. We call. I say you have to earn your beard, right? So it's real
yeah.
legit undercover work. We dress, well, I mean, I've got my Jason Bourne stuff over here all set up. Trying to get all my stuff set up, but you can see that was my.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
So you dressed the part, you looked the part. We would go out and actually buy hand to hands, dope dealers, guns, and that was like my job. So
Yeah.
we weren't a surveillance squad. It was like we're going out and we're buying dope, going in the dope houses, working stuff on the streets, going up and doing hand to hands. Now things have changed on how you do it, right? There's no corner boys anymore because everybody's got a phone.
Right. Right.
It's hard to cold knock on a house because you don't go up to the dope man's house unannounced without calling. It's not New Jack City days anymore, so you really
Right.
have to change how you're doing it. But that's what we did, man. It was you took pride in not having in doing confidential informant buys. It was pride in I'm buying dope and I'm buying it. And so
Did
I would
you
get a money draw every morning, and we just go out with
Now,
like a
did
team.
you ever have this one of the things I found semi-amusing was we had a dope house or a crack house where it was the second story is where they did business and they would have a Dixie cup on a string and that's how they would do the business. You would put money in the Dixie cup and then your crack rocks would come back down on it.
Yeah, that's a pretty trustworthy crackhead, man.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, if
Well,
we
you
call
gave them the money first, it's
sure, right? That's even as a user though, we call it let your money walk. If you let your money walk, because they could take your money and then never give you your dope, like that's rule number one in the hood is don't give your money to somebody you don't trust and you trust
right.
nobody. So like we never put our until we had that dope in our hand, we would
Okay.
never hand the money over.
I
Uh,
laughed at that one. I only saw it one time. I'm just like, well, that's a new twist on this.
Pretty
Okay,
funny.
that's fine. So where were you personally? Were you married? Did you have kids?
I was married. We had our first kid. She was 2.5 years old, and then within a year of undercover work, my second daughter was born.
Okay. Now,
So
what did your wife think? I mean, that's a big change. Or were you both oblivious that it wouldn't be as big of a change as you thought it might be?
I first, I was always a clean cut, no beard, crew cut guy.
Yeah.
So I had to talk her out of, can you be married to an ugly, ugly dude? And so that was the first battle. And then I wouldn't say I lied, but I sugarcoated a lot of the stuff.
Okay.
So beyond the one time I got run over, I've gotten run over a second time.
Jesus.
Um, we've been in a couple of shootings, and I had a couple of times almost got stabbed, and I broke a guy's neck during a fight. So I start bringing these up, like, babe, all these things that keep happening to me, I'm like a shit magnet. But in undercover world, if somebody calls and says they have a gun, I can, or if I think a guy's got, I don't have to go into that scene. So I started like trying to like tell her and sell it to her, like this is safer. She wasn't fully buying it. My wife's no idiot, but she, enough where it made sense to her. And because I had to get her approval, like, don't get me
Oh yeah,
wrong.
absolutely.
So she said, "Hey, as long as you can do it safely." I'm like, well, how do you go into these dope houses and stuff and do it safe? And she's like, as long as it makes you happy, know that you have a family at home, though. And I said, I'll always remember that, babe. I promise.
Yeah,
So, but the problem is you can't promise that. I mean, I said it, but you to go into the places that I did and do the things that I did, man, I there was no thinking about wife and kids at all. Like zero
sure.
thoughts.
Now, for those who are not in the know, like, what was your typical day as an undercover cop?
We kind of cut to come in whenever we wanted, but we generally came in the mornings. We do like, if you worked out, you do a quick workout. You catch up on recovery of stuff and do a bunch of reports. You can start looking through complaints, either officers' complaints in the field. People call in on a tips hotline and call in on dope houses, and they'll sometimes, scorned girlfriend will give a my boyfriend selling dope. And
Oh yeah, you got that right.
yep.
Always the mom or the girlfriend. It is like, oh yeah,
So we'd get those and we'd cold call those, and generally up by like 10 in the morning, we're running and we're already out the door. We'd have our money draw. We'd have, three, four, $500 on us, and we'd go out sometimes in pairs, sometimes in groups of three, but always in our own car. And we'd get out on foot. We'd just, call our people up. We'd have informants that would make calls and do intros for us. We just literally be out all day buying dope, unless we had like something big happen. So we had a bunch of crazy big cases where they need surveillance, and then we're not buying dope because we're following, a serial killer who we think's
oh,
a
okay,
serial killer. So we're following that guy 24/7. So like all those cool things we did, I mean, those were, great cases. But our incessants, I'm we were tasked with buying as much dope and as many guns as we could just to get them off the street, do our cases. We had so many search warrants we tried to get, kick in the dope man's house. We collect all the money and the guns, and it was, sometimes we get off at 6, 7 at night, and just to be home just long enough to eat dinner, and then somebody would get a call from, hey, we got some guy that just got a kilo. Now we wouldn't buy the kilos, and that's funny. You say you were a car dealer. I mean, a car salesman, and I know you wrote a book about selling cars or how to buy cars.
yes,
Because I likened buying like the big dope to being so much easier than buying a car. Like buying a car is a headache and a pain in the ass.
absolutely.
I even bad enough where I would, and my mom loves to haggle, so I would even as like a 40-year-old, I had my mom like go do the wheel and dealing for me. She loved it.
Okay,
Uh, but like if you go to buy a kilo of heroin, man, it's a business deal. There's like complete trust, and it's so easy. But I would buy an ounce and below on the street. Like those are your desperate dealers who,
sure.
in turn, a $40 bag of meth is life and death to them, and they'll kill over it.
Yeah,
So
yes, they will. They'll kill over $5 for God's sakes.
yeah. So that was I mean, that was our target people. And, it made for a lot of, I mean, thousands of hand-to-hand transactions, man. And it was fun and exciting. You'd be in these dope houses and fights would break out. And sometimes I would create fights. And that's where I say, turns out getting shot wasn't the worst thing. When I started losing myself to my, persona, which my undercover name was Ricky,
Yeah,
I'd start losing myself and turning into Ricky more than I was Brent. Man, I would like feed on this negative energy and do crazier and crazier things. And that was really my downfall. It wasn't getting shot, it was losing myself. So
gotcha. Now, what were some of the preconceived notions of undercover work compared to like the reality, either that you had or what you see like on TV and the movies, some of the big ones?
yeah, they of course they watch Training Day. They're like, oh,
Oh,
here he is, and
yeah.
Denzel Washington, and it's nothing like that. I kind of thought maybe it would be a little more personal, that you would, but it's such a quick hit thing. The addicts that we had to portray to be, and the dealers that we dealt with. I mean, it is usually a business transaction and really quick. Um, I wasn't really prepared for every person in the inner city would think that every white guy's a cop. Like I
Right.
knew that that was kind of a thing, but man, if you were a white guy in the city, even if you're in a white area, they every white guy with a beard's a cop. And so man, I really wasn't prepared initially for all the hammering that would go into questioning you and looking for a badge because our prostitution guys would be doing and they'd have their badge hidden underneath their shirt. I'm like, come on,
They
man.
would? Wow, that's
Oh, all they would work for was like, oh, we got an agreement for $20 for this act, and then okay, and they do their
oh,
signal or
sure, sure.
turn their signal on their
Yeah.
car. But we did. I did I, until I got retired. I couldn't even find my badge.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have it. And they're like, "Well, you need to turn it in." I was like, "Turn it into." I said, "Man, it's been long since put away." I mean, I did undercover work for over a decade, which was well longer than the 18-month general time frame.
Wow.
But yeah, I thought it would be easier to do because how many people buy drugs every day? Millions across the entire
Right.
country.
Right.
And it's
Right.
really not that hard, but when you're trying to hide who you really are initially, it's like playing a role in a movie.
Sure.
Until you break that and make it into really you are that person, at that point it became easy. And that's where the real big struggle becomes
Mm.
of when I go home, I would take all my UC stuff off because you didn't want that crap in your house. Just
Right.
like you didn't want your patrol boots
Oh
walking on your
yeah, absolutely. Cockroaches and everything else. You don't want that.
human crap and I mean all the things.
Yeah.
So I thought I was shedding Ricky at the door and bringing Brent home to two little babies. One like, but man, there is no once your environment really changes you, there is and there's no way to stop it. And if
Yeah.
you really want to be successful, which is why my buddy was like, dude, I'm out after 18 months. I just carried it a lot longer.
Yeah. Now looking back, knowing what you know now, would you still have gone down the same career path, do you think?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah. I had such a blast, man. And I knew I was making a big difference. Not that, in patrol I didn't, but I took, you know, a lot of the bigger cases and I knew I made a change on a lot of people. Like the cases I, would work on, the little dope buys, I mean, we all know that the prosecutor's not going to do much with those.
Right.
But some of those guys that you would get into, even just buying, three crack rocks or a couple of sticks of PCP, you'd realize like that's a really bad dude on parole for murder and he's out here doing this. And knowing that, okay, the more I do, I can really get this dude locked up and make a change for, the community. So
Right.
I really liked that aspect of it. And I mean, I've seen and done things. It is like the greatest show on earth, and I had
It
the front
is.
row seat, and then
Yep.
I actually was in the freaking show.
Yeah.
So it's like
You
getting
know,
called out from the crowd, like, "Hey, I'm going to come into the show." And
yeah.
it was
See,
awesome. I
I
loved it.
I think you make a difference in patrol as well, but you just don't see it. You don't have that gratification right away. You don't know the impact that you've made on somebody.
Yeah.
It's like one of my best friends, he grew up in probably one of the worst blocks in this city. We always made fun of it. It was South Fifth Place. And it was like no man's land. It was something out of a movie. And that's where he grew up. And he said, but there was one motorcycle cop that was always in the area and he would talk to him. Now, this motorcycle cop doesn't know that he made that impact. He said, I thought it was so cool. I love the motorcycle, the big boots, and he was such a nice guy, et cetera, et cetera. And he became the head of our motorcycle unit. Fast forward how many years later. So you don't know, but yeah, that's one thing I think cops shortchange themselves on is you don't know the impact that you've had on somebody or or a whole area, really.
Yeah. And, there's some of those I look back on and I kind of wish I could have followed up or even if, could remember some of the names of the people that I know that I probably made a difference.
It
I mean, there
becomes a
was,
blur. If you're taking 40 assignments a night, are you kidding me? It's on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. It's yeah, absolutely.
I know some of the
So,
situations in my head, but I don't know the names. So
right,
that's,
exactly,
I know I made
exactly.
a difference in that stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, let's talk about your shooting. Could you take us back to that night? What happened?
So I eventually got assigned to an elite unit. We call them the gun squad. So it's a mix of ATF agents and some of our best detectives. And everybody detective had their own like specialty, right? So we have our social media and bad guy network guy. So like he knows everybody's connections and who's dating who. We have our technology guy who knows the GPS and the phone trackers and all the things that we're doing. Our really big surveillance guy, and then I was the undercover. So our initial goal was to go out and buy large scale dope and long term dope deals and buying guns from felons and fully automatic guns. So that was like my job as the undercover was to go buy all this stuff.
Yeah.
But we did such a darn good job that our chief at the time had dictated that we work all the follow up to locate and help apprehend every homicide suspect that happened in Kansas City.
Okay.
Hard to buy a bunch of dope and buy guns when you're following
Right.
around.
Yeah, those are two different birds.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
they do cross paths, don't get me wrong, but they are two different birds.
yeah. So I mean, and for you get 180 murders. I mean, if you want to average that out, it's one every other day. Like Kansas City right now is at like 10 homicides. We just had three yesterday. So if you have three in one day, we're trying to track three different suspects down within an hour of the homicide happening. So we would get called out all hours of the night. I mean, I was working 95 hours a week. Uh, and just nuts. So we had a guy, his name was Marlon Mack, and he was known as in Oklahoma as Oklahoma's most violent robber. And he
Okay.
went out and was robbing stores, and he got more and more violent here in Kansas City. And you brought it up earlier, right? The carjacking where somebody kicks the lady in the stomach for no reason.
Right.
That was Marlon Mack. He
Okay.
robbed this chicken and fish store, and the guy did everything right. Opened the register, said, "Take everything. I don't, only problems." The kid gets nervous. He was a grad student at our local college, and he tried to run out the back door where Marlon Mack shot him in the back, spined him. He stood over top of him and executed him for no reason.
Ugh.
So we're tracking Marlon Mack, and we hadn't had a single day off in about a month. And for as busy as we were, our tactical unit that followed us around and did our enforcement, they had been working even more hours because they have all squads just like ours, pulling them in all different
Yeah.
directions. So finally, we get a Sunday, and it's like, okay, everybody, we're going to take Sunday off, except for we really want to try to find where Marlon's hiding at. We know they put his name and picture on a billboard, so
Okay.
now we know it's going to be harder to find him. He's really
Yep.
hiding out in hotels. And a small group of us, like five of us, went out and said, we'll go find him, lay him down wherever he's at. We'll come back and get him Monday morning. And they gave us two of the SWAT guys. They're like our Navy SEALs of SWAT guys. They
Yeah.
were
Okay.
our SNU TAC for Street Narcotics Unit, Tactical Unit. Like those are the guys that'll kick a door. They're not going to surround and call out. Like you have a problem, as long as they can legally do it, they're kicking doors in and coming
Sure.
in. So they gave us two of them. We find Marlon Mack. He's driving all over the place crazy, trying to evade our surveillance. And we thought maybe he was burning us, but turns out he probably wasn't. He was just, that's just the way he drove. We followed him to this really tiny, crappy motel, man, and you couldn't see in the parking lot would hold like six cars, and you had to do like the Austin Powers like 5 car point turn to get turned around to get out of the parking lot, or else
Yeah.
pull onto the highway. There's a big privacy fence, so we couldn't get eyes on what room he's going in. So I said, "Well, this is my expertise, right? The undercover part. I'm gonna get out. I'll dress down in my best tweaker gear." And I walked in. I was gonna rent a room and like sit and watch him, or see if I could sweet talk the manager and to tell me what room, or find
Yeah.
some way to watch him, get his room, and we call it good. I walked into the manager's office, and it's a bulletproof glass. It's like 8 foot by 10 foot tiny room. Dude's right there, and so
Oh
like
my
when I
God.
opened the door, I had to like step over his legs because he wouldn't even move his legs. He was like that contempt of me. I had to step over his legs, and I'm really like, that's our suspect. So, I mean, I called an audible right there. I have a listening device, and I snuck out of, acting like I'm renting a room, and where the hell's the manager? And I walk out and I start calling like, "Hey, dude, he's pinned in. Like,
All
what's he
right.
gonna do? He's in a
And
bullet
and
box."
I'm guessing you have no vest on. You have obviously no badge, no ID. Did you have a gun on you?
I before I got dropped off, I had it in my hand, but I we were gonna do only surveillance that day, so I had a Glock on me just in
Yeah.
case. Normally, my undercover carry was a Smith& and Wesson J-frame 38 special,
Yeah.
little 5 shot, banger.
Sure.
So I was like, well, Glock really would stick out and be harder to hide, so I'm gonna put it away, and I didn't
Uh,
take it with me.
okay.
Yeah,
So you're unarmed, no vest, just there.
yeah, just
Okay.
there. I had a T-shirt and baggy shorts. It's middle of July in Kansas City on Sunday morning at 11:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Quiet. The city was really, calm and quiet. And so I finally get the two tech guys to come in, and they were like a mile down the road, staying hidden. And as they finally came in, Marlon got just nervous enough where he walked out to his car, and he got to the back end of his car right as the tack car pulled in. As soon as they did, he just turned and looked at him, no expression on his face. He opened his driver's door, calmly sat down, and I mean, it wasn't like in a rush. He just shut his door.
Okay.
It threw like all these caution flags. Like, man, something's going on. And there was no point in my mind that I'm thinking like, okay, I need to run up and do this. I mean, at this point, I've been undercover for, so many years. I have never once been at all involved in a takedown, not once. So I, to the surprise of me, I found myself speed walking up towards the back of the police car where they were doing the felony car check, right? So
Yeah.
one car, two-man crew. They're behind their open doors, guns out. One guy's calling commands. The passenger gets out of his car and starts walking sideways and ignoring all their commands, just walked away and
Okay.
hands up, just sidestepping. And we found out later, Marlon told him, hey, start walking, don't run, just walk and
Yeah.
keep walking no matter what you hear or see. And dude was, so I thought, okay, I don't have a gun, I don't have handcuffs or anything. So I ran up to my buddy Mike, who was at the driver's door, and I said, dude, I need a gun. And of course, he's like, the fuck off me, Ricky. What are you doing? Dude, I need a gun. I don't have a gun. I'm thinking, right? Every tech guy's got like a million guns. Like these SWAT guys
Right.
should.
Yeah. Yeah,
Everywhere.
exactly.
I hadn't been in a police car at this point, so, almost a decade. So I was like, I don't know how to work the lock to unlock to get his AR out. So I thought,
Right.
okay, I'll take Mike's handcuffs and I'll go snatch up this dude so they can focus on Marlon in the car. And as soon as I grabbed for Mike's handcuffs on the back of his belt, the first explosion went off and it was clear to know. I mean, it was gunshots. I was like, holy
Yeah.
shit. So Mike both duck and I start backpedaling and I realize Mike's on his belly on the ground facing Marlon Mack, but all it looked like he was on the ground. I thought he was dead.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Well, Mike's a big dude. He's like 250 pounds, like 6'3". I'm like 5'9". At that point, I'd been training for half marathons. I maybe weighed 140 pounds.
Oh,
So I
wow. Okay.
was like, okay, I'm going to run up. I'm going to get Mike's gun and I'm going to just sit with Mike and like shoot it out with this dude and try to, save us. Cause I don't know how far I can drag Mike.
Right.
And as soon as I start making moves towards Mike, he pops up. We both, go for concealment behind hid that they had a police explorer,
Okay.
the new explorers. As soon as we get back to the back end of that, man, somebody tripped me and I fell over. I got back up, but I was in like this weird bear crawl position, like watching for Marlon Mack. And he did. He left his car and came sprinting towards us, firing the whole time. So Mike and Patrick, his partner, they worked around and tried to flank Marlon. And
Yeah.
I was like, stuck in the middle of this little tiny parking lot. And the next thing I
Oh,
know, I'm like 10 feet from Marlon Mack and he's firing away at me. So I get up and I take off running. I mean, that's the only thing you can do,
you're
right?
right.
Get up, I take off running around the privacy fence. And I remember I got away and I don't, because before I could see the rounds skipping left and right at me, I thought, okay, now there's no more bullets. I'm good. So the car that had dropped me off, I go to meet with him and I'm doing the self check, right? I'm like, okay, my chest is good, crotch is good. I kind of almost even have a smile on my face. And I was like, dude, I'm good. And I take a step and I buckled. And so that tripped me was my left knee. So it was an AK-47 pistol that Marlon was using. He hit me right in the back of the knee with it that
Oh.
round. So it like blew my leg half off. And
Oh.
then he got me several other times while I was trying to make it behind the police car. I didn't even know it. And then as I was running away, he hit me a couple more times. So I got twice in the right leg, once in the right or the left forearm, uh, left tricep, which broke my arm, and then two shots directly to my left knee.
Jesus. Holy
So
shit.
yeah,
So
weird.
what was there an opportunity for the coppers to return fire and shoot this guy that was shooting you?
So poor Mike, when he was down, he got hit 4 times, and one of the first ones hit him in his foot and knocked him down, which is where he went down. So he
Okay.
got shot in the shoulder and the hip, or right above his hip. And the foot. I can't remember the fourth one was somewhere else, but
Yeah.
he was too close to the underside of his door, so his frame hit on after his first round. It stovepiped,
Oh,
and if you know a stovepipe,
yeah.
it's
That's
kind
a
of
major
time
malfunction.
consuming.
Yeah.
Clear. It's not just rack it and go. You got to pull your mag,
Yep.
re-rack, load it, and rack it again. So, um, by the time they got circled around to go after Marlon, he was focusing on me and shooting at me. Marlon went and jumped in his car and took off, got away.
Holy cow. So was there an immediate chase or how long did it take to find him?
Yeah, they and the other crews that were doing surveillance, they were working the radio like, "Hey, there's shots fired. does anybody else hear this gunfire?
Yeah,
Mike and Patrick were too busy, in the middle of the gunfight to be putting out. We're
sure.
shooting.
Yeah,
So as soon as they realize, okay, we got a shooting and Marlon's getting away, they're on him pretty quick. And even as Marlon pulled out of that hotel parking lot, I had just gotten into that car and it was like a black Chevy Cruze. I was going to the
yeah.
hospital, and he was about 50 yards in front of us. I was like, Brian, the guy was driving me. I'm like, Brian, give me your gun, pull up alongside him. I'm gonna execute this dude.
Right.
He's like, yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
So he got away, maybe made it like a mile and a half and ditched his car. They had him pinned down a little bit until he ran across I-70 and he hid out in an abandoned house that was burned out. He was trying to go to his girlfriend's house, which
Sure.
we knew that's where we first picked him up, at.
Okay.
But some concerned citizens said, "Are you looking for a dude, dreads, and a rifle?" They're like, "Yeah." Well, 10 minutes ago, he ran into that abandoned house. So when the first crew tried to, you know, it'd been a bit, so they thought maybe he wasn't in the house. So as soon as they tried to go there, he started raining down shots on them. Like, okay, we've got him pinned down in this house.
Now it's
So,
attack setup. Yeah.
well, he just kept firing shots at everybody as they were trying to set a perimeter up. And
Oh.
it's all really wooded, really bad vegetation at this, house.
Yeah.
So, for about a little over an hour, hour and a half, they had a big, huge shootout. He shot another officer. So three of us got shot in that
Wow.
one incident. And Buck, that's my buddy Buck. He totally lucky to be alive. That round ricocheted off his front sight post off his AR and hit him in the bicep. So it was coming
Jeez.
dead center on
Wow.
him.
Yeah.
And we don't have vests that'll stop that bullet.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so uh, after Marlon got almost out of ammo, he kicked the back door open and came out spraying towards the tree line. And it was like five guys of our guys hidden in the tree line. They just, you
Just
know,
lit them up.
did what they had to do. Yeah, Swiss cheese the shit out of him.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
that ended
So,
that for
yeah,
them.
it did. So you now, did you get obviously somebody drove you to the hospital? Did you get an ambulance or what did that look like?
Yeah, so my buddy Brian drove me the whole way, and we're having to listen to all this stuff as we're making it.
Yeah.
But as we're going, all of our jump out gear and everything else is in the trunk of this car, and speed is of the essence. I was bleeding really bad, so I didn't know I was shot in the tricep, and that my arm. I knew my arm was hurting. I didn't
Yeah.
know that it was broken. I could still move it a little bit, so it's kind of
Yeah.
hard. But I said, "Hey, dude, let's just get to the hospital. Let's not stop." And I made my own tourniquets. So I am tying my own tourniquets on my leg and on my arm, of the homemade style. So, but I remember I kept like slipping on the center console. I'm like, man, why does my arm keep slipping?
That's
Because I knew
blood.
my forearm was the bullet had gone through like up by my wrist and
Yeah.
like shredded my forearm and blew out right by my elbow. So I was like, okay, that's a bad wound. But so I tied the tourniquet right above my elbow. Well, that shot in my arm was higher, and I couldn't even feel any. Like even my leg, I couldn't feel such shock. I
Yeah.
had zero feeling. I mean, I was laughing and joking.
God.
Like I almost called my wife to be like, "Hey, something happened, but everything's okay." And I was like, "Well, probably not the time to call her."
Right.
So luckily, I didn't do that.
Okay, so you got to the hospital, then what happened?
Yeah, they start going through, and I knew what was going to happen. That they were going to cut my clothes off.
Yep.
And I beat the trauma people to the trauma room. We came screeching to a halt. And, as you know, most of these, the places that'll save your life, who handle, seven gunshot people a day,
Right.
that's where you want to go. You want to
Yep.
get out of there before the infection sets in, but that's where you want to go to save yourself. So we pulled right up to the bay. Security guard let us in, and we had already called ahead and said, "Hey, let them know we're coming in hot." And Mike's coming in right behind me, and we beat him in there. So I thought, man, I love these undercover clothes so bad. I don't want them cutting them off. So I got undressed. I took all my stuff off myself, and I kind of like sat there like, what the hell's taking them so long? And making jokes, with the security guy and Brian who was standing there with me, not even fully realizing like the scope of exact. I mean, I had so much blood on my leg, I couldn't see,
Ugh.
what it was until they cleaned it up, and I could see, my kneecap was out of place, and I
Ah.
could see ligaments in the bone, and it shattered a bunch of bone fragments all in there. So I mean, I didn't know that that was as bad as it was. But again, I looked at it as I'm not hitting the chest, so like, I mean, this is flesh wounds, but it just
Yeah.
wasn't. So to get hit in the knee, especially with two direct rounds from an AK,
Oh,
that's pretty good. It's luckily that it didn't blow my leg off.
oh
So
my God, yes. Yeah, I have one friend that was shot with an AK-47 in the foot, and it took part of his foot off.
yeah,
And just by happen, he went down like a ton of bricks. He didn't even realize it. And his partner went after the guy who shot him, and his partner was able to shoot the guy in the head as he was running away. And he had a Smith and Wesson 40 cal. That was our duty weapon back then. And the bullet ricocheted off the guy's skull. It didn't penetrate. It
you've
ricocheted.
seen that happen a lot.
That's
I've seen where they get somebody gets hit and it like goes underneath their scalp,
yes.
and then all of a sudden, I'm like, well, why
Pops
did it
out.
go through?
Yes.
They're like,
Yeah.
no, it like went through, it lined through
I mean,
his.
it knocked him out. He thought he had killed him, but
Yeah.
it's like they're like, wait a second, he's breathing. How is he breathing? And it's like, oh shit, he's alive. You just had one massive concussion. It's like it's unreal. So how fast did they like swoop you into surgery?
Not fast at all. They even weren't
Really?
sure if they were even going to do surgery since I didn't have any organs or anything.
Oh, okay.
They stopped the bleeding. They could take their time. So they brought a surgeon in that was on call, and he, looked at my MRIs and X-rays, and he said, "This is a little more extensive than I'm comfortable with doing."
Okay.
I was like, "That's nothing you want to hear." So, but they weren't sure. They were going to send some guy in from out of town, and they did. They flew some other dude in, and he came in. He's like, "I think I can fix some stuff. It's going to take several surgeries, but we can get it
Okay.
fixed up, patched up. We'll make you better." But they weren't sure if they were going to do it the next day. So, I mean, I hadn't eaten breakfast, and now I'm shot, so I didn't eat all day. And then they said, "Well, you may go into surgery tomorrow, so we're not going to let you eat tonight."
Oh, that sucks.
And
Oh.
they set up like the hospitality room across the hall from me, and
Yeah.
so I'm watching all these pizzas come in, and
Oh.
everybody, and they're laughing and joking and having a good old time because that's what we do, right? You
Right.
get together and we're having, food and everything else. Everybody's getting fat and happy, and I was like, my part was I was so beat myself up already. I had a lot of shame because if you mess up in this line of work, it can get you killed or shot. So if you've gotten shot, you've messed up. So there's some good shame right there, and a lot of blame and guilt for getting Mike and Buck shot. So I took a lot of I was taking the whole
Mm.
responsibility pie. I had took the whole thing. I didn't blame Marlon Mack at all. I was like, man, he's a bad guy. That's what bad guys do. Here's how I messed up. So I was already spiraling in some depression shit.
Mm.
And to listen to people laughing and joking it up while they were eating pizza, it pissed me off. And I finally was like, you know what? No visitors. Shut them off.
Wow.
So
How
throwing
about
my
your
own
wife? When did your wife get to you?
that
And what did that
was
look like?
bad.
Yeah.
So when they transferred me off the bed that I sat down on waiting for the triage people, they moved to me the moving bed. They put me in the temporary room waiting for my full room to come available. They had sent an officer to pick her up, and she was already freaking out. And police cars were still buzzing past them because they had to call in. Like 300 people came in either on their own fruition or got called in.
Sure.
So he was still having the big shootout by the time my wife was heading towards a hospital. So she had to look over and be like, "It's not over, is it?" And they wouldn't even tell her exactly what happened, but she kind of put two and two together,
Mm.
but she had no clue how bad I was hurt. She didn't know if I'm like incapacitated. Am I gonna die? Am I gonna be paralyzed or what? She didn't
Yeah.
know. So she's already on edge, and she walks around the corner. I'm laying on the sheet that I've been bleeding in for an hour and a half. So I'm like laying in a big pool of blood, and here she, total panic attack. She almost quit breathing, and she just
Wow.
couldn't handle it
That poor
anymore.
thing. Oh my God. It's like we're the tough guys that it's like, yeah, I'm hurt, this, that, and the other thing. But it's so hard for our loved ones because, they haven't had the training, they haven't had the experience, and you always default to the worst case scenario. Always. You
Well,
know,
and we're also numb to it all, right?
yeah,
I
we
mean,
are.
even my buddies that were coming in, I mean, not that they're looking at me like any other, shooting victim that they've walked in on, but we've become so numb in our careers that emotion is shut off, and we have to have that to
Right.
survive this
Yes.
career. So it wasn't hitting them as hard. Now it does hit you a little harder because it's one of your own, and I get that. But yeah, for our loved ones that aren't experiencing the trauma that we are every day, day in and day out, yeah, it broke my heart. That was, that was just killing me.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. So, how long were you in the hospital?
A little over 6 days, and
Okay.
so not bad. But several surgeries once I got out. But I mean, I remember when I got out because I that was in the area that I work patrol in is where that hospital was, or is still is. So I remember when I got out, I looked around. It's an area that I knew for 6 years on patrol, plus a whole bunch of other years in undercover work. We driven past this hospital all the time. I didn't recognize it, so I ended up having to go home, and I was already on edge, and things were not right, and I knew it.
Yeah.
But
How long did it take the chief to come visit you?
he came that afternoon when I was there.
Good.
Same with our mayor, who at the time, that mayor, he had already tried to slash our budget and do a
Yeah,
bunch of other.
that I was just gonna say it's so funny how they depending on which way the political winds are blowing, your
Yep.
mayor or whoever, is like, oh yeah, we love our cops, and then the next day, oh we gotta cut them, we gotta cut that budget, and then it's like, oh yeah, those big mean racist cops are doing this, that, and the other thing, to pander to their constituents, and now all of a sudden,
Yeah.
hey, now I'm a hero, we love you, it's like, oh my God.
I played the political card with him. I said, "Hey, I'm good, sir." He's like, "Well, thank you for everything you did." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I said, "But no pictures, and you can take your press people out of here." So shoot him out of the room pretty quick. Well, then he went down the hall to Mike's room, and um, Mike's really good friend, who was his partner for the longest time, his wife was in that room, and she lit into him really
Good.
well. And I was like, and she said she didn't say anything wrong. She's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you're cutting our budgets. Our guys don't have the protection they need. They don't have the numbers they need.
Yep.
They're running around." And so got into him, and he's like, "Well, he couldn't say anything. He just like
No.
sidestepped it back down." I'm like, "Yeah, go pound sand, dude."
Yeah. I told my wife, my ex-wife back then, and then I got remarried. I told both wives that if anything happens to me, I do not want that mayor within 100 feet of me because I don't want to be a photo op. That's all it is for these guys.
Yeah. Well, and I said that too for a lot of stuff. Now, President Trump, he was president at the time. This happened in July of 2018. He
Yeah.
called and said, "Hey, I want to come visit these officers."
Really?
Yeah. So Trump, he was like, "I want to talk to their families." So he came into town. He was already coming in for, Josh Hawley was our senator here. He was getting ready to run for election. So he was trying to help him get elected. And then
Yeah.
he was having a speech at a VA conference or something. So he said when he heard about us, so yeah, he made a point to come and talk to my wife and kids and me. It was
Wow.
pretty cool. We all got to meet with President Trump, and then the governor of Missouri has invited us several times, and we've been to his mansion, the governor's mansion here in
Yeah.
Missouri, and had dinner with him and his family, his grandkids.
Oh,
Just
wow.
nicest guy as can be, and he's an old sheriff from back in the day, so
Oh,
he
okay.
real awesome. But he said, "Hey, here's my personal number," and his wife gave her personal number to my wife. Said, "Hey,
Damn.
you guys need anything? Love to help you out any way we can." So to this day, it's just the nicest people. So he just left office. He term limited out, but
Yeah.
those were the only photo ops things I did, which you know it ruined my undercover career. Right now, I
Oh,
can't be
right.
undercover. I'm done.
Yeah.
So,
And
but you
that's
can't
okay.
say no to the
Yeah.
president, no matter what your political affiliation
Oh,
is.
yeah. No matter who the president is. Yes.
Office, and if you're gonna get a chance, it's the office that you have to really respect, and that was
Yes.
huge to be at least understood that the sacrifices you made are being recognized.
Yeah,
So
well, kudos to the governor and the president. That's
yeah,
outstanding. I love to hear stuff like that, and there should be more of it. I absolutely love it. Wow. So, how long did the recovery take, and what did that look like, both physically and mentally? Because there's two different recoveries.
yeah. The mental, I knew I was messed up pretty quick. I was having flashbacks. I wasn't sleeping well. I mean, I maybe slept 2 hours a night for a year and a half. I mean, maybe. I was
Yeah.
always up,
Ugh.
always up. And the I had I think it was about a year, a little over a year when I finally got, at that time would have been my last surgery. I had one more, post all of that, but it took me. This happened in July of 18, and it was late 2019. I actually came back to work. So, but the physical part, I have a pretty good limp. And I was at work at limping, and there's something that's it teed off on my mental problem because I went right back to the same unit with the promise to my wife that I wasn't going to buy dope. So I'm on surveillance, taking out homicide suspects on surveillances and jumping
Yeah.
out. And I mean, I couldn't hold my gun. My hands were shaking so bad, but I was like,
Yeah.
well, it's Missouri and it's cold, of course. Like
Sure, sure, sure.
Wisconsin's even colder than Missouri, but I'd be like, oh, it's 10 degrees outside. That's why I'm shaking. But I mean, I knew I was wrong, but and messed up. But man, I was already even getting ridiculed for being off so long previously.
Who was
From
ridiculing you? Let me stop you there. Who's going to
people
be
in my
ridiculed?
division, man. I mean, it was now part of it I think was they were used to me being the cut up and the jokester and
Okay.
locker room ball busting. But the problem you got to really look at it is, man, I know I was a different person and I was really trying to hide that I was different and that I was affected. But like you can't be going around calling somebody cripple when like I'm partially paralyzed. Like,
Right.
like
Yeah,
I'm
that's there are
getting
boundaries.
shot.
Yes, we do have boundaries. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think they really realized, and I didn't stop them either. So
Sure.
I'll take some of that too. But I didn't want people really teeing off on my struggles mentally, especially. So
Yeah.
I would hide this stuff left and right.
Now, could you have retired, taken we call it a duty disability retirement. Could you have after all this stuff happened?
Tough answer on that one because I don't want to be. I wanted to come back. We'll put that clear. I was
Okay.
fighting to come back to work.
Sure.
And had I pressed for it myself, probably is the answer.
Okay.
But we also have, and I just saw this guy at the airport the other day, and he's on my list of people I'm just going to walk up and punch
Okay.
if I ever see him in public, and he knows it. But he was our HR captain, and he made some really shitty decisions. Like when I said, "Hey, I got these many surgeries, and then I came back to work, but then I had to get another one."
Yeah.
He did some slick willy paperwork to deny me medical treatment.
Oh
So,
my God. I mean,
and then I
that's
went from having,
it's workman's comp. I mean, there's no gray area with that. You were shot, effing 6 times for God's sakes. I mean,
yeah,
there's no gray, there's no maybe kind of sort of if. It's like, yeah, this happened while in the line of duty. I was working. There was nothing shady about it. Yes, a part of us accepting this job is the understanding that if I do get hurt, I'll be taken care of.
yeah. So what they did was you have to do the full and unrestricted duty of a police officer to come back to work. I failed all those tests, the physical abilities test, and all the things that they had me to do. So what he did was he filled out and made a whole fake form that restructured my job duties.
Oh my
And not only did they use that to get me to be able to come back to work, but then they used that to deny me further medical treatment, saying, "Hey, you're good enough to do your job. So why are you trying to get this extra surgery?"
God.
Like,
Okay.
"Well, because my surgeon said I needed it."
Yeah, I'm not
And
a doctor. If my surgeon is saying, it's like when my plumber comes here and says, "Hey, you know what? We need to do X, Y, and Z." I don't know shit about plumbing. So, yeah, okay. So if it's my surgeon, yes, I'm gonna say, "Okay, doc, have at her."
so, yeah, that was a pretty sore spot because I said, again, when he said, "This allows you to come back to work," I'm like, "Cool." And then now you can't get any more treatment. I said, "Well, that sucks." And that's why, he's on my list. I'll just punch him next time I see him. It's fine. I'll take whatever repercussions that. I told our chief that. I said, "Hey, nobody likes this guy anyway, so I'll probably get an applaud somewhere."
You'll get,
But I went back to work throughout the summer of 2020. We did the riots here in Kansas City, which were really bad.
oh yeah,
Put
2020. Yeah.
I got put in uniform for the first time in umpteen years, and put on the front line of people chucking bottles and stuff at us,
Oh
which
my God.
was even funnier because I get right. I'm hurt, and they say we don't have the right ballistic gear, so they got everybody new riot helmets because before our old riot helmets were just the motorcycle helmets reissued,
Yes, I know what you're
like the
talking
chip
about.
helmet,
Yep.
right? The white helmet with the black front.
Yep.
Everybody else got now these new subdued black Kevlars with cool face shields. Well, since I was off, work at the time when they were handing these out. Nobody grabbed me one. So
Nah.
I go to the riots in 2020 and I got this hat that doesn't match anybody else. So they're looking at me like, hey, look at the Mexican war general with all this shit all over his. He's got to be in charge. So, man, everybody's like, all the bottles are like teeing off on me. Like, oh, he's the
Oh
guy
my
in
God.
charge. He's responsible. I was like, come on, man. I almost took some spray paint to the helmet just to, quit being such a target. But yeah, I went through that entire summer and then finally I knew I was struggling more and more and I started drinking really bad and just to get through the days and at night just to sleep and not go to sleep enough to have a dream.
Okay.
So it was the and Thanksgiving Day that year, I raised my hand and I'm struggling. I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to
Sure.
quit. I'm, and they
Well,
said the chief, who's now the chief, she was our major of HR at the time. She said, "Hey, Brent, we're going to take care of you. We haven't been taking care of you, and I'm ashamed and sorry for this." So I got another surgery out of the deal, and they got me with a new therapist that just completely did wonders for my mental well being.
yeah.
Then they retired me July of 23. So
So you took a duty disability retirement then.
yep, yep.
Okay. Very
So they
good.
finally made it right.
Yeah,
But
but you shouldn't have to go through the bullshit to
yeah,
have them make it right. That's so wrong. The way and I any cop that's worth their salt, will acknowledge that anybody that's been shot, it does stuff to your head, in the first place, and obviously the physical injuries and the mental injuries are even more. That's carte blanche. If you want a DDR, here you go. Because I mean, there's no greater, I don't know. It gets under my skin, why you have people who have been shot like multiple times who are fighting to get a duty disability retirement. And you have somebody that kind of sort of saw a dead guy one time and oh my God, I can't handle this anymore. And they get one with no questions asked. And they're full of
they
shit.
definitely either know somebody or they've got some dirt on somebody to
Yes,
get. We have
exactly.
those
And
same things happen here.
yeah, it
And I
just
get
get
you can't keep medical retiring people. You're going to destroy your pension system. But
but there are
uh,
times where it's very appropriate and you should it's and we've gone through, and I'm sure your department as well, and we've had people who had traumatic events happen to them. They were shot multiple times. They tried to come back to the job and things didn't go so great, for all the stuff that you're talking about. And sometimes it takes a boss to say, you know what, Brent, I don't think it's okay for you to come back right now. You're, and it takes a lot of guts for a boss to say that because almost everybody's going to be, especially if the cop wants to come back and, they think you have it in your head where it's like, you know what, I'm not going to overcome this unless I get back on the street. I have to get back on the street. I have to, be a cop again. And sometimes it takes a boss with some balls says, you know what, it's not the right fit for you anymore. I'm sorry.
yeah, so I actually that's where a lot of this stuff for me, what I'm doing now, is really helpful. Is I go talk to departments, command staffs all over the country. I'm doing these presentations that I go to conferences, talk to chiefs of police all over the place. And part of it is a leadership talk of you have to save these people from themselves.
Yes.
Like I would have, and it, I did. I went back into it. We got into two shootings within my first 6 months of coming back to work. And like if the leadership could accurately see the stuff that I was going through, because there were signs, people were ignoring them. But
Right.
I think part
Exactly.
of it is dysfunction can't see dysfunction.
Right.
They were having a hard time seeing exactly how broken and busted I was because their own, so, own stuff
Right.
that they're dealing with. But you have to save these people from themselves. I needed to be safe for myself. And that's no easy task because I guarantee you, if somebody would have come up and been like, hey, Brent, you're really not doing well, I would have jumped in their throat, called them a bunch of names, and told
Yeah,
them,
absolutely. But
go after yourself.
sometimes as a boss, and like, yeah, I'm not saying I was the best sergeant in the world, but I knew my guys. And
Yeah.
by guys, the male and female officers that, were under me. I even hate to say that word under me, but that I worked with, that I was their boss. And you could tell when something ain't right.
Yeah.
If you part of your job is getting to know these people and their personalities and it's like, okay, it's not safe for that person to be out there anymore. Sorry. or it's not safe for their well-being as a person, it's like, okay, yeah, this it's not a good fit anymore. We got to talk about, what we're going to do. So,
And the
yeah,
military's done a really good job of this. Why it's taken us a little bit longer in this line, I think. I don't. I think people really have a hard time saying PTSD, for the mental aspect of stuff, is still such a real thing it is for police officers. They
right.
see it pretty easily with military people, but if you listen to any of the doctors, I mean, like we're never out of our war zone as police
Yeah,
officers.
exactly. Exactly.
It
It's
makes it
like
tough.
somebody mentioned it as like death by a thousand paper cuts.
Yeah.
It just or it's a bucket. It's like how much shit can you pile into one bucket before it just starts overflowing, baby? It
Overflow
just
eventually.
yep.
Yeah.
So I always like to ask people that have been in a situation like this, and obviously I don't know you that well, but did you like find religion or go against religion? I'm always kind of I always wonder about that.
So my wife is, that she's so spectacular. She had actually even started us because I wasn't really much of a churchgoer beforehand.
Yeah.
And so she had always like, hey, I want our kids to grow up with a sense of faith, and we need to go as a family. So right before, I mean, it was maybe a year before I got shot, we started going, and we have an awesome church that the pastor and the associate pastor were just amazing. The support that they gave us,
Yeah.
some sense of security and the whole thing. So I wouldn't say I dug in any deeper, and I
Okay.
definitely didn't go against it. I just stayed with the status quo of what we had done. So.
Yeah,
Uh,
because for some people, it's like, how could you do this to me, God? Why am I such a bad person that I have to go through this BS? Or there's other people's like, well, thank you, God. I'm alive right now. I probably shouldn't be alive.
And I think that all depends on how you're processing your event.
Yeah.
Because at first, I mean, I was pissed, beyond pissed at myself. I was pissed at everybody of like, man. And it was a self-pity party, right? I got a
Yeah.
pretty big ego correction. And so everything was pessimistic and there was no optimism. And I think now that I've turned the, tables, and a lot of, again, the doctor, her name's Dr. Prohaska. I'll give her some, love right here. She's an amazing. She has a sense and a purpose and a direction of the treatment. And it was not, I'm going to be your paid best friend and just let you vent. Like there was a purpose behind everything I did. So once I got around on and got the tide turned, man, I was like, okay. Now, and that's again, it turns out getting shot wasn't the worst thing. Like I would never have been able to say that in the first like year post getting
Sure.
shot.
Sure.
So now I have a completely different perspective on all this stuff. So I think that's where people come with more optimism
Yeah.
of,
Now
oh,
was
thank God, because some intervention had to happen. I mean, the guy shot at me 26 times, hit me six. I mean, and he's first started shooting at me from 15 feet away.
oh my God.
That's pretty damn close.
Yeah,
So,
that's yeah. You're
and I had gunpowder in my mouth.
wow.
K pistol, right? The powder doesn't burn because the barrel's so short.
Yeah.
So I had gunpowder in my mouth. That's awfully close, and to not get killed is there's a miracle in there.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I think so too. I think so too. Now, was there mandatory like psychiatric treatment that you had to undergo? Or what did that
I
look
only
like?
I only laugh because there is, and it's been long known that that's kind of a sham.
Okay.
Because you go in, they tell you don't be drinking, but of course that's the first thing we do is we go to the bar and get hammered drunk. Uh,
Absolutely.
After a shooting, it's like, okay, we're alive and we won, so let's go to the bar and get
Yeah.
drunk. So they say don't do that, and then you know you lie your ass off to do whatever you have to do to get back to work. And that's exactly what happened. So eventually, when I realized I had some problems, some people noticed it and they came and talked to me. I had a really good friend who's been in like 12 police shootings.
Oh my
So
God.
he came up. He's like, "Man, why don't you go talk to someone and take it serious?" And I did. But again, there was no direction. There was no
Sure.
purpose behind the treatment. Just come in and bitch. Well, all I did was bitch about the same people making fun of me for calling me a cripple. That's that's how my therapy sessions tend to go. So it wasn't helpful. It wasn't helping.
Right. Wow. So what a part of, you said that you found a good psychiatrist or counselor or whoever that was. What part of your therapy do you think was the best for what you went through? What worked the best?
Um, so being able to come at a lot of the things from a standpoint of when we walk through a lot of the things of what did I do or what could I have done different? Like it was pretty eye-opening for me when, because again, I took the whole, responsibility pie for my own, and I turned out 40 other people that were, the main boots on the ground during that were doing the same thing. They blamed themselves for not coming into work
Yep.
that Sunday and
Oh yeah,
just
absolutely. Yep.
all the things that could have been, it's their fault. So, but to walk through that as like a Monday morning quarterback and really walk through, okay, so Brent, you didn't call the TAC guys in, then what? Or if you did and you didn't go up to the car, then what happened? So like playing this whole thing out and
Yep.
realizing, yes, I made some mistakes and we're all alive here except for the one guy that deserved to be dead. Um, really kind of helped. And then when I finally talked to Mike, who unfortunately Mike lost his career in this same thing from getting shot. So talk about some, guilt there. I was like, well, I just ruined somebody else's career.
Yeah.
I can handle losing mine, but I just messed somebody else's life up. So, being able to Mike talk to me and tell me, hey, like this was the best thing that could have happened for me, and I'm in a better place now post being shot. So, because he got the same correction as me. I mean, he'd been working that elite unit. I mean, those guys kick in like 800 doors on high risk search warrants a year.
God.
He'd done it for more than a decade. So,
Yeah.
for a guy like that, like, he was much like me. He was his addiction to adrenaline, the things we were doing. It to hear that, okay, people are coming out from this, okay, and but to really play it out, like if I had done it any different, it, I don't know if it would have made much of a difference. So
Right.
I had to get my ego corrected on that. I mean, and that's what my therapist, man, she was like, she called me out on my bullshit and she wouldn't let me get away with stuff.
Good.
And I would, well, no, but you understand. She's like, yeah, go, yeah, shut up, idiot. So,
Well, and that's something that's been lacking in police world. I think we're getting better. Police like in Milwaukee, we have a police chaplain who was a cop for like 15 years. So he knows exactly what we're going through. We have two police psychologists. One, her dad was a Milwaukee police officer for 30 years. The other one is married to a cop. And that trio is bar none the best I've ever seen. We actually trust them. And they're, like you said, I've talked to people that, have, seen them and I've interviewed them on the show and they're the real deal. There's so many that are not the real deal. And so I'm glad you found somebody that works for you. God bless you. That's awesome.
yeah,
So
but she only focuses on first responders, which is
okay,
huge. So
perfect.
that's like
Yeah,
her specialty. And I mean, I'll call her, she's a genius too. Anyway, she's smart, someone that's finally smarter than me, and she's just gruff enough that you can't, because right, pretty male dominated field, we're used to
sure.
also being in charge, and
Yeah,
she may
we're
be
all
in charge.
alphas. Yeah.
Yeah, but she's quick to be like, no, and call it out. So,
That's
um,
awesome. I love
yeah,
it. So, you know, retirement from law enforcement, most of us know or have an idea when we're gonna pull the pin. It's like, okay, for us, it's 25 years and a certain age now, but back then it wasn't. It was just 25 years, and you could get a pension. Now, for you, you didn't plan on any of this, obviously. So, what did retirement look like for you? What does it look like for you right now?
man. At first, I knew it was coming because they said, hey, we're gonna run you through the process to push you
Sure.
towards medical retirement. And even knowing it's coming, once the day actually hit, it was really awkward and weird, and it does feel like losing a lot. I think for me, it was really positive that I didn't have like all my friends and people that I knew were not police officers. So I
That's
had a
huge.
bunch outside because
Yep.
you're going to lose this career, one whether it's on your own fruition or not. You're going to lose this career, and you'll be forgotten on this department. I promise you.
And it
You'll be
has to be
remembered.
that way.
Yeah,
We all know guys and gals that when they were working, they thought they were God's gift to law enforcement. And they're like, well, I can't call in sick. I can't take a day off because, the wheels are going to fall off the car. It's like, no, this agency and every agency everywhere is designed to, if Pat, you know, goes to Ireland tomorrow and, renounces his American citizenship and he goes to Ireland to, fight in the cause or whatever, everything's going to keep spinning. It's not going to stop.
yeah, it has to.
Yeah, it has to all day
Yeah.
long.
So
but that's
It
hard for
was,
some people.
yeah,
And it's weird. Walking away from it is weird, but for you it would be even stranger. At least I had a heads up. You didn't.
yeah, and that sucked. And I was young. I mean, I was still 45 years old when they
Yeah,
kicked
absolutely.
me
That
out.
is young.
Man, I've got 20 years of what I planned on to do, 20 years worth of stuff or something.
Right.
And I have a young family. I still have, young daughters, and you got to think about health insurance and all the things
Oh
because we
yeah.
don't get health. Once you get retired, you don't get health insurance here anymore. So
Ooh,
they don't keep you on that.
ouch.
So yeah, it's like 3 grand for a family plan. It's like three
Oh
grand a
my
month.
God. That's
Like,
insane.
okay, you got to find something to do anyway because when you start sitting by yourself is when a lot of demons start showing up anyway.
Absolutely.
So I started writing in therapy, and then I continued it afterwards. Part of it was a way to process, but then
Yeah,
the other part was I wanted, my family to really have an understanding of what I went through and what I've done, but also like what were the thoughts in my head while I was doing it. Now,
sure.
some of it, isn't I'm not the most proud of, right? Because they expect, well, you were thinking about us. I really wasn't because you can't. Like you
Right.
can't go do these high risk jobs and always be thinking about those back home. Because once you do, you're going to start really slipping and making mistakes.
Well,
So
I'll stop you right there. That's nothing to feel guilty about, and it it's a good thing for them because you have to be 100% hyper focused on the task at hand. Yeah,
so you can come up.
you're right. And I remember I interviewed Jack Carr, the Navy SEAL guy, just all this other stuff. And when I was doing my research, there was another Navy SEAL, and he was talking about how they were in Iraq or Afghanistan, I forget where. It was Iraq because they were like in some like nicer area, what used to be like a palace or something like that, or a nicer like mansion. And they were holed up in there. And he said, I would put up pictures of my family and my wife if I got on the sat phone and talked to my wife. As soon as I was done talking to her, I put all that stuff down. I put it all away. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, that way I have to be focused on the job. I have to be focused on this task. Otherwise, it's a disservice to my guys that are in my unit, and it's a disservice to my family because I'm I have a much greater chance of coming home in one piece if I'm 100% focused
Yeah,
and
for
not
sure.
worrying about them at that point in time. So, sorry to stop you, but it makes
Oh,
100% sense to me.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, what advice would you give to a new cop or a cop wanting to do UC work after everything that you've been through?
Man, and that's a big topic of my presentations when I'm traveling around the country and talking to these conferences. And it doesn't even have to be UC group necessarily, but even patrol
Yeah,
is your environment's going to change you. You have to understand that. Self-awareness is a big topic that you start hearing on self-regulation. To be able to go back and take good inventory of, you and are you staying grounded and staying true to yourself and your morals. But once you start losing yourself, if you're doing accurate self-reflection and early and often, you'll start to see it. So I know we could talk about my book here in a little bit or what, but that's
yeah, we will a little
the
bit.
reason
Yeah.
why I wrote it was it's not to tell a war story. Now there's war stories in there, but it's to really show somebody like what does it look like when you start losing your stuff and bring an actual real messaging into it. So you'll see loss of self-awareness and self-regulation, all those things that come with it. But that's the thing. You got to know that that's a risk, a really high risk, especially with UC work, is how bad your environment's going to change you. Patrol work for sure too.
Oh yeah.
But if you're going to go roll around with an informant, I would have thought there was no way, chance in hell that I would ever kind of be like one or like consider one, even almost like a family.
Right.
You read the book, you'll realize like, man, I started seeing these people as, my family even, and like
Ugh,
really being able to relate to them more than I did my own self or even my own family. So
boy,
it's easy to get lost in that, in the work.
I
So
I
that's
get
the
it.
big warning is you got to do the accurate reflection, call it an after action review, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
weekly, and then don't be afraid to start therapy and talk to a therapist even if you don't think you're broken, right? I mean, every therapist, I promise you this, every therapist, every psychologist, they all see their own therapist on the side because they
Oh
know that
yeah,
you have,
absolutely. Somebody's got to take care of the people who take care of people.
yeah.
You
So
know,
why is there a stigma that we shouldn't do it even if we're not broken, if you will, right? So there should be no harm in it. Now there's a stigma, there's a negative stigma
There is.
behind it. If you can get that treated early and often, you won't lose yourself. Even if
Yeah,
it's just once a month, once every 3 months, I
absolutely.
promise
And
you,
I'll add to that that you have to find the right therapist.
for sure, for
I
sure.
mean, just because
Not
they
many
are,
best friends
they
out there.
have the piece of paper up on their wall or whatever, doesn't mean they're going to be of value to you.
Yeah. And that's going to take some trial and error. I mean,
Yes.
and generally they're probably not on your EAP plan.
Yeah,
Gen-
probably. Well, hopefully they are. Hopefully they are.
Hopefully they
Also,
are, 'cause they can be expensive.
oh yeah. So, hey, if a cop has gone through or is going through a traumatic event like you did, what piece of advice would you give them? If you're in a room with them, it's like knowing again, coming through it and being on the other side. What would you say?
I get this call because like you, I'm pretty easy to find.
Right.
You're easy to find, you're easy to get a hold of, and you're really good to respond. And I'm the same way. So I get a lot of people hitting me up, and that's awesome. And I'm grateful for that because I think I can help in at least some way, shape, or form. Shame, blame, and guilt are the three things that'll drive you into the ground the most.
Mm,
You gotta shame can only live and grow in the dark. So getting it out in the open, like me being able to talk today, is a part of me letting my shame out. That I don't have shame on that. I struggled mentally with things.
sure.
You have to believe you can get better. That's like the number one goal. People will dig themselves a huge hole, and like they're looking up out of this hole and not believe that there's a way to get out of it. And I was guilty of it too. I thought, there's no way I can get better. I'm in such bad shape. I mean, from a guy that would sweat through the sheets every night for the 2 hours I would sleep, going out and checking my house perimeter with a gun every night at 2 in the morning. Uh, to think that that would ever stop was like impossible. But I don't do it anymore. And it took me a while to learn that you can get better and get healed from this. It's going to take a lot of work. It ain't easy. It's really, really hard. It's probably going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. Uh, but we're warriors, and warriors never surrender. So
No, I
that's
love it.
that's what I tell everybody. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So, PTSD, it's thrown around a lot, and many times it's, 100% justified. Then there are the instances where it isn't. Everybody's getting PTSD about, stuff, it's overused. Oh, I stubbed my toe on the coffee table. Oh, God, I got PTSD. Or my guy or my gal didn't win an election. That's always my favorite. I've got PTSD. Shut the fuck up. It's like, get over yourself. In either way, it's like, you know what? 4 years from now, vote for somebody else. The world will keep spinning. I promise. No
Yeah.
matter what your affiliation is, but I just, it's shocking to me that people are that weak, over stuff. There's a lot of big stuff in life that, like I said before, it's 100% justified. How does it make you feel, somebody who's gone through something that you've been through, where it's like, oh, I've got PTSD because, my dog barked at the wrong time or whatever the hell.
So it pisses me off, number one. And you can,
Right.
once you actually have experienced what the PTSD really is, you can call out the fakers and the bullshitters really effing quick.
Yep.
Beyond the people that are, oh, my dog, or the, oh my gosh, the Biden lost, or, Vice President Harris lost, Trump won, or whatever pisses you off and you want to claim it. Um, it pisses me off because it ruins it for everybody else that really needs help and treatment. There's not a
Yes.
very good treatment. The success rate is like 40%. And generally, if you're still in this line of work, you're going to get a reoccurrence and it's going to fire back. So the people that throw it out, and again, like I, I've, I thought I'd given a lot of credit to my military buddies for the stuff that they'd seen and done. And until you're really in it,
Right.
uh, have dealt with it, you really don't know that you didn't give them enough credit for like how difficult of a struggle it is.
Sure.
And so I'll give people the grace that if their president didn't get voted in, I'll give them the grace because they really truly don't know the pain that really is. I mean, there's a reason why suicide is so prevalent with people that have gone through PTSD and
Right.
in situations like this. It's an ugly side effect because it looks like an easy way out. Um, but that's you should really tell you like that's exactly how big and hard that struggle is. Like to make that ultimate decision is scary that that is what can only be seen as the only path.
Yeah.
It's not the only path. We know this, but man, to think really how hard someone is struggling that they can do that, I'm going to give them the grace that they just don't know exactly what PTSD really is.
All right. And in the same vein, hero is being thrown out around a lot, especially in 20. And it's like, oh boy, I went to work today. I'm a hero. No, you're not. The 60-year-old lady that works at Pick and Save at the grocery store, I see her there every day. Every time I go in there, is she a hero too? I mean, she never complains. She's got a smile on her face. And it was like, oh, I can't go to work. Oh, this and that. The other thing is like, and then only heroes work here. And I'm like, oh my God, enough of the hero shit. And it's like, I think you are a hero. I think the people that you were working with that day are heroes. I think the medical people that, saved your life are heroes. But how does it make you feel when, it just got so whitewashed where everybody's a hero?
I laugh at the term, and you're right. I think the people that worked around me that day were all heroes. I don't put myself in that same category, and I think that's what separates a lot of people that do the real hard heroic type work. Because I
Right.
guarantee if I asked any of those people that worked with me, "Hey, do you think you're a hero?" They're gonna be like, "No." I see him as one,
Absolutely.
but and they may say that about me. I'm not sure. I think the true warriors that really are out there don't look for recognition when they do the work. They let their work speak for themselves and they're happy with the job well done. I think that the people that really want to push themselves up and call themselves something, I think that they have some insecurities that they need to probably work through. And we'll just probably leave it at that one.
All right, sounds good. Now, your book, Undercover Junkie, Chasing Highs, Confronting Killers, and Unraveling in the Chaos. It's due out February 15. Why write the book?
We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier,
Yeah,
man. Uh, I think so. I've been traveling around, like I said, speaking at these conferences and speaking in departments and command staffs. And what I usually get is about 2 to 3 hours worth of people talking to me or emailing me and calling me afterwards and saying, "Man, thank you for this because
sure.
now I can actually see exactly what it looks like." And they all know somebody. Oh, that's my partner, or this is the people I
Yeah,
work with, or I see this. I see you
absolutely.
and me. And until they can really see it, they won't get fixed. Again, if somebody would have come and talked to me and said, "Brent, I think you're struggling. Come on, let's get you some help or something," I would have told them, "Pound sand, get out of here. Let me go do my job." I think when people can actually see what it really looks like from a real standpoint and the stories that they can relate to, that it will make a change and help. And obviously, I can't go. I'd like to go speak to everybody in the law enforcement community across the country, but in short of being able to do that, the book really will help. And I think that's the biggest goal of the book. It is, there's war stories in it, like I said, but it's not to glorify it. Going back to the hero topic, like this is a shameful thing in our environment is to talk about the things you've done. Like it's pretty degraded upon if you are seen as someone that, "Oh, this is what I did." Like you would get ridiculed, made fun of.
Right.
But that's not what this is. I mean, there is a specific messaging behind it, and it was also therapeutic for me.
Sure.
Again, I wrote this by hand like 6, 7 times on
Wow.
pen and paper, and then I put it on the computer, and then I
Yeah,
went chapter to chapter and rewrote
sure.
it all chapter to chapter. So, like, I put a lot of work into this, and I think, to be able to my family and my friends to really see and know what I experienced and what I thought and felt and saw was huge. So, all those things combined, that's really why I did it, man.
All
It's
right.
we all know, right? You're not going to be a best-selling author making millions of dollars unless you're somebody of super importance.
Well, you
But
never know. I hope it happens for you because it has happened in the literary world. I
yeah,
hope it
hey,
does happen for you.
if it does, I loved it. I love it because that just means more people saw the messaging.
Right.
I
So
mean, and that
what should the reader expect from this book? Is there like a central theme like resiliency? I mean, what do you think?
it really revolves more around the self-awareness and the self-regulation, and
Okay.
watching out for the changes in your environment. I mean, there's a little teaser on this one. There's probably going to be a second book, and that's where the resiliency part's going to come in. So it got, nobody wants to read a book that's like 800 pages long. So I'm going to have to split up into two at least. We'll see if the authors and writers like you, I said it, man, this is my first book ever. And maybe I did it the wrong way, but it was it was tough.
Yeah,
You guys are gluttons for punishment, man.
there is nothing easy about writing a book. My hat
No.
is off to anybody who actually hits that publish button because A, it's a ton of work, and B, you're putting yourself out there, man.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, you're gonna get some shitty reviews from very little people who, they don't feel good about themselves unless they're trying to drag somebody else down. It's inevitable. You're gonna have the trolls. So you have to have a bit of a thick skin, and you're also going to have people that are going to absolutely love this and invite you to dinner and name their children after you or whatever. It's both sides, but stay tuned. It's going to happen. That's
Yeah.
just the way it is. So if this
That's
book
the good
ever
part
went,
about talking to you, right? The advice, what would you tell a new author? There's a good one, right? I mean,
yeah,
I knew to expect, and I also probably will probably get some blowback from people like, well, same as the guys that have written Navy SEAL books, right? Because we don't talk about what we've done. It's very
right.
similar to police work. We don't talk about what we've done.
That's
Like it's
very
seen
true.
as bragging, and it's to be shamed upon. But again, that's not the purpose of this book is to tell a war story. So I'm
Right.
trying to help people.
Very good. So if this book ever went to the big screen, who would you want playing you? I love
Ooh,
asking this question.
it is a good question. Because I mean, like I said, I had some pretty
Or
crazy and good looks,
or
man.
living or dead. We could, resurrect Sean Connery if you need him, or whoever.
Yeah, man, Bradley Cooper, I think he could probably do me pretty good.
All right,
Slim down. I'm a little guy, so I think he could do it pretty well. Yeah.
all
Oh,
right.
Bradley, he's a good-looking dude, so like, if I could even get anybody to think that I'm on par with him,
And he could
there's
pull
a
off a beard. He could do the beard. He could do the beard
sure.
look. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I just need him to grow out the dread because I had dreads, like went like halfway down my back. I just like to need to see him in that first before I commit to letting him do it.
there might have to be a wig for that, but who knows? But Hollywood could do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So, I asked this question to the heavy thinkers, and I think you're a thinker here, Brent. Yeah, if you had a billboard that millions could see, what would you want on it? Like a favorite quote or saying?
See, I think it'd probably have to go with the never give up. Just
Okay.
simple.
That-
Just simple. Again,
Absolutely.
it goes along with the phrase that I used earlier, and it's one that my buddy Roger taught me.
Yeah.
He told me early, he was one of my first partners in patrol, is the Warriors never surrender. And so, man, maybe I'll go with Warriors never surrender.
I
That's a
like
better,
that. Yeah.
way to say Warriors
And
never surrender.
the phrase warrior gets a bad name in today's culture, and it shouldn't. And a warrior isn't somebody who goes out and puffs their chest out and is picking fights and whatever. They've got A warrior is somebody who has the strength to do stuff that's uncomfortable, to go into and do a job that nobody else wants to do. And there are times when your life or somebody else's life is at stake where you have to be a warrior. Who's going to run into that school where you've got like three or four people shooting? It ain't going to be an anti-warrior. It's just for this job, that's what you need. So
And I think the big aspect of the warrior too is they do it for not for themselves, but they
right.
do it for the community, and that's
Absolutely. To be
the
of
country.
service.
That's the part of it.
Yep. So I have some Facebook questions real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
So Annika Melinda Kalulu asks, "How did you overcome the horrific experience of being shot and manage to return to the job?"
Warriors never surrender. Hey, let's just answer it
Yeah,
with that one.
sounds good to me.
It was that's a good part of it, but the bigger part was I was broken so bad and so addicted to adrenaline. I would liken it to say like maybe I was addicted to heroin type thing, and then I lived through it, and maybe I knew some corrections needed, so I was just going to take Percocet pills instead. So that's like a really bad analogy that I would use, but like I was so addicted, I would have done anything to keep getting my high. And so
Yeah.
how I did it was I was still really, really broken.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, that's how bad addiction can be. And it doesn't always have to be a substance.
Right. Absolutely. Miriam Hashem asks, "When you are undercover, how hard is it to separate your actual life from your undercover life?"
You know what? I lost it really fast. And I trained, no, probably 10 or so different undercovers. And I taught him the same thing. You lose your personal stuff really fast.
Wow.
It's a bad way to do it, and it'll come back to bite you. But that's what I did. And it's surprising how quick it'll leave. Me, I had never even bought drugs. I've never used drugs.
Right.
I've never even smoked a cigarette. And I go out in the hood, and I'm like, that's the cigarette is like your ultimate conversation piece. You'll see it
Right.
on the first 48 when they're interviewing people. They'll hand them a cigarette
Oh,
because
absolutely. Yes. Everybody
and I,
smokes.
man, I was on the street trying to like smoke cigarettes, and I was like watching people on how to hold it because I was holding it wrong, and like all the things that you'd be like, that guy's definitely off, and it's because I didn't know. But man, it took me about 2 months, and it was more, I was no longer playing a part. It was
Yeah.
like ingrained and instilled in me. So at that point, it becomes really natural. And I mean, buys are just easier to get. The questions, people question you less because you just exude a dope user, and people are like, "Oh, he's a bearded white guy," but I don't think he's a cop. I mean,
Okay.
it's weird
Gotcha.
how once you lose it, everything got easier. So then you learn to lose it more and more.
Right. Now, when you and she finishes here, when you finish that particular job, what happens to the relationships? I think we talked about that. Is there something you learn? Yeah, we talked about that. How to talk to people, human nature. We went through most of that. Now, Rachel Freed asks, "What case made you roll your eyes the most?" That's an interesting one.
You know, I uh I will preface all of this to say that I have done and said a lot of things that are against who I really am as a person. Um, but you have to do some things in this job that you're just to get the job done. I never used uh, racial slurs, so that was a positive. But I did do a lot of work in, and there's different sects of it, of the uh, alternative lifestyle community.
Hmm.
And when you go into it, you realize like there are some people that are hypersexual around drugs. And I remember I would go into these gay bars and just try to buy meth. And for the life of me, you could never give credit due to a woman what it's like when she goes into a bar and has a bunch of guys hit on her. And that was happening to me. I'd gone into a bar where nobody recognized me.
Okay.
And so it'd be like the new young girl
Oh,
coming
okay.
to the
Gotcha.
bar, and all
Yeah.
the guys are like nonstop. I mean, I got a lot of free drinks, but uh, like I just remember thinking, like, God, man, why does it have to be so overly sexual? And why is everybody hitting on me? And I remember rolling my eyes like, oh my gosh, this is just like what a woman has to deal with.
Yeah.
And I really feel pity and sorry for them because this is like uncomfortable and it wears you like, now what bar are you going to go to? And this is what women have to do all the time. Like,
Yeah.
this is one time is all it took for me to get tired of it. So that probably the easiest answer on that one.
Okay, and she also asks, what moment or moments do you think are the most tense during a sting? What was something that what was something that kept you going when times were dark?
The most tense. So again, like the dope world has changed, but we still have to use some of the and there's many ways to skin a cat, right?
You're right.
So, the one of the most tense would be early on was if you're going up and like cold knocking on a house. Again, it's totally against the dope rules anymore. And there are also very real racial boundaries in this world. I'm a white dude, so you put me in a neighborhood, there's not a white guy for 20 square blocks, and I'm knocking on this guy's
Well,
door.
they're thinking cop, yeah.
They're either thinking cop or I'm there to break in the house.
Oh, sure.
So, you know, if it's a shitty looking dude like I did, like I looked, usually they'd open the door with a gun in their hand. And so
Right.
like that initial like shock of like, okay, now eventually it wears off on you where you're like, okay, dude, you got a gun, but and there's no script to it. It's just like talking off the cuff. Like me and you never met and we just start bullshitting and trying to talk your way into it. For me, that was the most tense is like, okay, I know this door's about to open because you can hear the locks clicking and you know
Right.
it's a dope house. So you know there's guns, you know there's dope, and there's probably multiple people in there. And if
Yep.
there's not another white guy for anywhere, like this is going to either end really badly or it's going to end really good. So it's pretty nerve wracking. And what kept me going was, and what it was knowing that um, the greater good was probably going to come from all of this. Generally, these neighborhoods were really pissed off at the dope house,
Yeah,
but
they were big time.
they they couldn't do anything about it. Even like a lot of times, the dealer wasn't even really living there. He was just squatting with a girlfriend or
Yeah,
a friend or cousin's house. So to be able to kick that in and either get them boarded up, closed up, and get them off the block. Now it's like herding kittens. They're going to go 2 blocks away,
right.
and it's
But
going to be
still,
their problem.
but you got to do something.
Sure, you can't let it just keep being the Wild
Right,
West
exactly. And the good people that live in these neighborhoods have to deal with this BS on the regular. And that's hard.
24/7. It's
Yeah,
never. They're bad enough that they're in these neighborhoods that are always hearing police sirens all day, every
right.
day, all night. Like me in my neighborhood, now here, you're not. I'm not hearing a police siren ever. But they're. I mean, they have the helicopter overhead all night, and they're
Yeah,
hearing police
that's
sirens to give them a little silence and a little solace to their.
yep,
Your life
absolutely.
to even go outside without worry about getting a drive by for even just a month.
Yep.
Man, that's a
It's
win.
right. So let's wrap this up. This went a lot longer than I thought it would, but hey, I could talk to you all
Need to
day. This
talk.
has
I'm
been
a talker, Patrick. I'm a talker, and I apologize for that.
no, no, not this is perfect. If you have a podcast, you want somebody that's a talker for God's sakes. It's no fun when you're doing all the talking. All right. Well, where can people go to learn more about you and your books?
Yeah, so easiest place is to my website. It's www.undercovered.net. Sounds like undercover, but plural, or I mean, past tense, undercovered.net. Um, that's the easiest place. You'll see me. You can, see some of the stuff that I'm doing, speaking. And the book, it's on Amazon, but there's a link right there on my website. Currently, in a couple of my genres, I'm the number one new release, which is awesome. And what I'd like to, offer to your listeners here would be a little special thing if you're cool with this. Us police guys, we love our challenge coins, same as the military folks. So for people that are watching on the video, they can see. I'll put it up there, and I'll put a copy on my page, my website too.
Okay.
That's our challenge coin from my undercover unit. So if you go on to my website and send me an email, show me that you bought the pre-sale on the book, I'll send you one of these challenge coins as a thank you and a little something extra in there too, a little thank you note and handwritten thing. So
So,
I'd love to make that available to anybody, and you can even hit me up on those and ask me questions too. Like I said, I'm a pretty open book. I love talking, as you see.
yeah, what's your email address for people that want to do the challenge coin thing? How they
Yeah,
contact you?
it's on the website,
Oh,
but
okay.
also it's also Brent at undercovered.net.
Okay,
So just my first name at undercover.net.
I'll put that in the show notes. So, okay, everybody out there, go buy Brent's new book, Undercover Junkie: Chasing Highs, Confronting Killers, and Unraveling in the Chaos. Brent, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Patrick, I love being here, man. It was just an honor and a pleasure. I can't thank you enough.